All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Madison Glazier.
And I'm Lenitra Bennett. Thank you so much for joining us on this difficult day for the Big Bend. The eye of Hurricane Debby approaching the coastline right now.
Yeah, rain and wind have been lashing North Florida all night long. The strongest part of the storm is moving closer to our area. So let's go ahead and take a live look out at Taylor
Perry,
County.
yeah.
This is the situation there in Perry. We can see the rain coming down out there right now.
Very interesting, those raindrops there as things start to happen in our area this morning.
And we know that this may be a scary time for you and your family, so that's why we plan on being here with you every step of the way.
That's right. We have team coverage across the Big Bend and South Georgia, and the community set to see some of the worst effects of this storm. Our first alert meteorologist, Rob Nucatola and Josh Green, are tracking every aspect of Hurricane Debby, where it's headed, and the threats it could bring to where you live.
Rob, we just got you down from the National Hurricane Center. Can you go ahead and share with us what the latest update is?
Yeah, the 5 o'clock information is in. Not a whole lot of change just yet. We're at that point now where it's going to be a lot of watching and seeing where we're seeing those bigger rain bands. This is a close-up of what looks like the core of Hurricane Debby. Still a hurricane. It's going to be a hurricane for a while still. This is the edge of that core, getting awfully close to areas against the Taylor and Dixie County coast between Horseshoe Beach and Steenhatchee. A couple of decent bands near Keaton Beach. If we put this in motion over the past couple of hours, you'll see that core was a little further south, and then over the past 3 hours, it's creeping its way to the north and almost a little bit more northeast now. So we'll see when they decide to officially call some sort of landfall. Usually it's when that eye wall crosses land. That's where they pinpoint it. I think it's really, really close, maybe not quite there yet. The 5 o'clock information still has those winds at 80 miles per hour. There's probably just a little time left for it to get a little bit stronger over the next few days. And I say few days, this is going to continue to be a prolific rainmaker up the East Coast. Now, I think today and into the day tomorrow, parts of North Florida and South Georgia have the best chances for the most rain. So this is one of those slow movers where it's all day kind of wet, and then as it continues its way up towards the coast, going to be areas of coastal Georgia and the Carolinas that get a whole bunch of rain too, and flooding will be issues all along this. I think the storm surge possibilities are going to be most in our area, but as it gets up the East Coast, we're going to hear more and more about those flooding and these really big rainfall totals. Now, as far as our setup for watches and warnings go, where we've got the red shaded areas, that's Franklin County, Wakulla County, Jefferson County, Brooks County, and areas a little bit to the east. That's where we've got the hurricane warnings right now, and that's for the expectation of hurricane-like conditions. When we talk about hurricane-like conditions, we're talking about winds that get up over 74 miles per hour. We are more than likely talking about wind gusts that get up over 74 miles per hour. That core is only about 30 to 40 miles wide, so that's where those strongest sustained winds will be, and a lot of those are going to be elevated off the surface of the earth. Down at the surface where we live, those winds will be much lower, and as that continues to move north and over land, it will get weaker. But some of those gusts, those 2 or 3 second bursts, can absolutely be very, very strong, and that's going to cause some issues with all these soaked limbs and soaked plants and saturated soils, and that's why we're expecting power outages and trees down and all the like that we see so often with those tropical systems. Now, we have the orange colors. That's tropical storm warnings. That's where we expect tropical storm-like conditions. Tropical storm force winds at 39 miles per hour. So I think we could see some gusts up over that. I think for most of the area away from that core, especially west of it, we're probably going to find winds in that 20 to 35, maybe 40 mile per hour range. That's it, a windy, windy day and quite a bit of rain. But near that core and well east of that center, that's where we're going to find more of that rain, and we're going to find more of that wind, likely those wind gusts. So we'll be watching for all that throughout the day. Let's talk storm surge. All around the Big Bend coast, we've got storm surge alerts and warnings because we are expecting that water to pile up against the coast, especially feels like closer to where that core is. So that means areas in Dixie County and in Taylor County where it could be 6 to 10 feet above normal high tide. Now, the good news is the high tides just finished about an hour ago. So the tides are going out, but the water is still piling up. So if it would have coincided maybe a little bit differently, we might have had even higher potential storm surge, but it does feel like at the peak, we're still talking more than 6 feet above normal high tide. That alone would cause some flooding. Add to it all the rain that's going to come down, and that's going to aggravate those flooding concerns. And yeah, we still have tornado watches in effect. Jefferson County, Brooks County, east. On that eastern side of where we expect that core to be, that's where we have the most likelihood of getting some of those rotating thunderstorm cells. Now that just by the sheer physics of the way the system is moving and the rotation of the overall parent area of low pressure, the tropical system, that can cause those rotating cells, so we're watching for them. Fortunately, we've not seen very many since yesterday evening. There were several across parts of the Florida Peninsula yesterday afternoon, so the potential is there, and that's why we have the watch issued. We'll certainly keep our eyes on it. I think over the next couple of days, the flooding is going to be the main issue because there's so much water in an area that's already seen so much rain over the past couple of weeks, and that is going to cause some serious flooding concerns. Those swollen rivers and streams, the Suwannee is going to fill right on up, and so are many of the other smaller rivers, lakes, and tributaries. So in all those low-lying areas, you know where you are. Be extra careful for those flooding concerns, and especially on some of the roads with some of the heavy-duty rain. Now, our computer model wants to bring everything through the area by tomorrow. But that's by tomorrow, and then it brings a whole bunch more rain up into the Carolinas. Let's talk about some of those winds over the next couple hours. What we expect to see are these winds increase a little bit, but right now most of it from the west or northwest, or from the east or northeast, up to maybe 25 or 30 miles per hour, that's all. So it's still windy out there for sure, but it's not like you imagine when you hear tropical storm or hurricane. And some of those wind gusts are in that 40 mile per hour range. Those are those 2 or 3 second bursts, and that certainly is a consideration as this storm continues to slowly make its way to the north. And I think slow is the key word here. So that means we're going to find long periods of the day today where we get some sizable rainfall accumulations. Now notice there's a real clear back edge to where all that rain is. As that rain cycles its way up through Lafayette and Suwannee and Hamilton and Madison counties, it gets back towards Jefferson and Thomas and Grady and Leon, and it sort of just drops on off. Now eventually we're going to see a few more of those heavier bands spiral through more of the area, but it's going to be one of those days where you get into Gadsden County, you get into Decatur County in west, and you're wondering where the tropical storm is. You get into the areas of Taylor County, into Dixie County, Lafayette and Suwannee, and you know exactly where the hurricane is. So very different west versus east. That is going to be something that we watch. Hardly any rain falling right now into places like Bainbridge or Quincy. We've had some light rain from Crawfordville through Thomasville, and we've had some serious rain around Perry, around Madison, around Live Oak, around Mayo, and over towards the I-75 exchange. So that's going to be the way this sets up. So eastern areas, so much more rain than western areas. And we've already seen 3, 4, 5, 6 inches worth of rain where we see these purples and reds in our far eastern areas. And we've had less than an inch across parts of the central viewing area or to the west where we see the green colors on that rainfall accumulation. So that's what we're looking at here today. It definitely does have that more classical appearance to it. And it took all day yesterday for that eye to really develop, that core to really close on in. But it's done that. And now it's getting closer and closer to land, maybe a little ahead of schedule. And the sooner it gets on land, the better chance it will have to start weakening. So we'll continue to watch for any possible strengthening for at least a little while longer. Once we get this on land, the rains will be the main story. And I do expect to find a whole lot of rain, guys, as we continue through the day. We'll have lots of updates here through the morning. We'll have lots of updates all over the place. But we've got crews all over the place to bring you what's going on, where that's going on. So let's send it over to the news people.
All right, Rob, thank you so much for that update. And of course, like he mentioned, we do have crews stationed all over the Big Bend, right? And later we'll have some in South Georgia. We have our Abrea Ruffin right now in Steinhatchee. Let's go ahead and get a check-in from Abrea to see what she's seeing and hearing right now.
That's right. Good morning, Abrea. What is happening? What do you see right now so far?
Madison, Lenitra, it's pretty nasty out here, as you can see. It's been raining consistently for the last few hours, and the wind is starting to pick up consistently. I want to turn your attention over this way where you can see that the wind is carrying the rain and smacking it against the water. You can hear just how strong those winds are right now. It was a great idea to bring those boats in yesterday as the water is starting to rise. Now, it is still too early to give a full report, but we are watching out for flooding and that storm surge that we've been hearing about. We do not see any major flooding where we are, but that could change. We will continue to scope out the area for damage or standing water that may roll in. We are also starting to see the lights flicker out here. And there are some items that are starting to fly and debris kind of falling over where we are. So we are going to head in pretty soon, but we'll continue to provide updates for you guys. Reporting in Steinhatchee, Abrea Ruffin, WCTV Eyewitness News.
All right, thank you so much. Stay safe out there, Brea.
That's right. We'll check back in with you in just a few.
And as we mentioned, we do have team coverage. So we just saw Brea there, and now we have Stacey Inez, who is in Perry. That's also Taylor County.
That's right, Perry. Stacey, we want to go ahead and check in with you out in Perry. Those conditions, as we saw from Brea, that rain hitting the water looked like it was moving pretty hard out there.
Yeah,
Stacey, what are you seeing, and how do things look where you're at?
Yeah, so we are a little bit more inland, so we're here off of Highway 98 in Perry, of course, still in Taylor County. But so far what we've seen this morning, the rain, of course, very consistent. The wind has picked up over the last several hours, and we did get a chance to speak with emergency management yesterday while we were here. And one of the most important things they want us to remind people living in this area is do not go out if you don't have to. And it seems like we're saying that over and over again, but they really want to make sure people understand not to go out because you then put first responders at risk. And once the storm surge that they anticipate happens, they want to make sure that those first responders are safe. And so that's one of the most important things right now. But again, it's rain. We have seen some power flicker for a little bit, and the light over my shoulder continues to flicker at this point. But for now, we still do have power, but it has been very back and forth in terms of that. But the biggest thing right now is the wind. It's picked up severely, and of course, we'll be here throughout the morning monitoring the conditions, and we'll keep you updated from here. But wind and rain, and of course the potential for flooding. So for the people who absolutely have to be out, that's another message they wanted us to get out. Of course, turn around, don't drown. Do not drive through those flooded waters. But they really want people to stay off the roads as much as possible. We'll be here all morning though, so we'll check back in just a little bit. For now, Madison, Lenitra, I'll send it back to you guys.
Stacey, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned, right, keeping the cars off the roads. I don't know about you, Lenitra, but as I was coming into work, I still seen a lot of vehicles on the roads, which was pretty shocking. So if you're in the midst of traveling, you really need to get to where you're going.
Indeed, and as she mentioned, we saw that light flicker back there too, so I'm sure we'll also be keeping our eye out on power outages in our area. It seems like things are kind of getting active in those spots for sure. All right, well, we also have Savannah Kelly live for us, and she's in St. Mark's in Wakulla County this morning.
Yeah, Savannah, go ahead and kind of give us an update of what you're seeing out there right now.
Yeah, we are at the Shields Marina here in St. Mark's, and it is windy here. I just lost my hat a couple minutes ago. It is raining as well, but overall things are pretty tame here so far. There is an evacuation order for coastal areas and low-lying areas of Wakulla County that was put in place last night. There's also a shelter open at Crawfordville Elementary that opened yesterday as well. It's open to anyone, and it's pet-friendly, so anyone who needs a safe place to stay, that is your place. We'll continue to keep monitoring the situation here in Wakulla County throughout the morning, but for now, reporting live at St. Mark's, Savannah Kelly, WCTV Eyewitness News.
All right, thank you so much, Savannah. We'll check back in with you soon.
All right, and we want to go ahead and give you an update or a live look at a map from the State Emergency Center looking at the current total power outages. This is the Tri-County electric map right now. It looks like 20% of Taylor County is without power right now.
And then that was 30% of Jefferson is out right now. All right.
So we plan on keeping track of our power outage updates throughout the morning as well. And of course, you can see there the supporting crews staging right now. There's over 17,000 linemen mobilized and after Governor DeSantis's emergency order. So you can see video of trucks and crews outside of hotels in Tallahassee getting into place for the storm response.
The governor saying loss of power is likely from this storm. He went on to say he's been talking with local leaders, including Tallahassee Mayor John Daley, about getting people reconnected faster after this storm. So they are on standby and ready.
We want to go ahead and check in with meteorologist Josh Green, too, for a look at the latest of whatever's to come of Debby.
Josh, what's the latest?
Hey guys, of course, let's get a quick update on that. we switch over to Max 2 as well so we can look at what's going on my computer. So while they work on that on the back, this is just a live look right now at what the actual center of the storm looks like. We're pretty close now to the coastline near Taylor County there and Dixie County as well. Just about 20, 30, maybe close to 40 miles, depending on exactly where it's going to want to track over the next hour or so. I'll show you a little bit of a radar loop to get a better idea. Just the latest update, again, this came to us from the National Hurricane Center at 5 a.m. Hurricane Debby sustained winds of 80 miles per hour. So yes, it's called a hurricane, but I don't want that to scare you too much. You know why? Because it was a tropical storm, sustained winds of 70 miles per hour. All right, so that's only a difference of 10 miles per hour to give it more of a big, bad, scary name. It's moving towards the north-northeast, so it's a little bit more east than just due north at around 10 miles per hour. So if it's about 30 miles from the coastline, that means we got about just maybe an hour or two left to go. And then if it goes a little bit further east, it'll make a landfall a little bit sooner. Nonetheless, let's just go ahead and play out this forecast track. It is going to continue to move towards the north and the east very slowly. Unfortunately, Debbie's not going to be in a hurry to get on out of the Big Bend in South Georgia, so it might still be stuck below the state line by the time we get to around the lunch hour today. The good news is once it moves inland, it will start to kind of fall apart just a little bit. All right, all the rain is still there, but it's not going to strengthen anymore. It's in fact going to weaken. The winds are going to let up. The biggest winds are definitely going to be down by the coast and spots like Taylor, Lafayette, Suwannee counties as well. And we'll look at some of those warnings that kind of lay that out for you. But again, it's a slow mover. It'll move across the state line sometime this afternoon and then eventually exit our area by the time we get to late tonight or early Tuesday morning. And after that, it becomes a problem more so for the coastline of Georgia and South Carolina, and it will be a very big rainmaker there. Here's some of the current watches that we have in place. And again, two different colors. You got the orange and you got this red. The red is the hurricane warning where we've been preparing for hurricane conditions. Now, if you ask me this question, are we still going to be seeing hurricane force winds all the way up in South Georgia by the time it gets there? Perhaps not. All right, perhaps it falls apart just enough to where we don't get to those 74 plus mile per hour wind gusts. Will we be seeing those close to the coast and perhaps in some of our southeastern Big Bend counties? Absolutely, and that's what we have been preparing for. Outside of where it's forecast to track, the winds will let up a little bit. All right, we're talking more so tropical storm force wind gusts in spots like Thomas County and spots like Leon County as well. This is what it looks like right now on the radar view. It's really interesting to kind of watch the little wobbles, right? So if you look all the way down near Tampa, there's a little wobble to the east, and then it kind of reset itself to the west a little bit. But it certainly has tracked far enough to the east where it looks like Taylor County landfall is pretty much imminent at this point, perhaps even a little bit closer to that Dixie County line, just very close depending on which direction it decides to take over the next hour or so. But again, you look out to the west, not as many impacts. Here's a zoomed in look at the radar picture to get an idea of where the rain is right now. And it is absolutely centered for the eastern half of the Big Bend and now moving into south central Georgia, all right, where you start to see the yellows and the oranges. That's some pretty steady rainfall. And you kind of factor in that wind and it's going to kind of blow that rain sideways, all right? We're kind of used to that around here during those big bad storms sometimes in our typical summertime afternoon days. This is the center down here. This is where you're going to see the worst of the wind. So right now, that's pretty much approaching Steinhatchee, a little bit near Keaton Beach as well, on the coastal reaches of Taylor County. That's going to be about the worst of it, and that's what's going to continue to move slowly inland over the next several hours. You look at spots like Thomasville, Tallahassee, down to Crawfordville, well, it's been pretty much just a steady light rain, not much more than that. The wind will make it look a little bit more than what it actually is. You head further west, my friends in Bainbridge and Quincy, Seminole, Miller counties in South Georgia, been absolutely nothing, all right? Folks out here, you're going to be like, wow, I didn't know we had all that stuff going on over there. It's not going to be the same storm for the western communities as it will be for our eastern communities. Here, absolutely, we're getting the brunt of it, and we unfortunately will over the next several hours just because Debbie's going to be such a slow mover. Now, our biggest concern really with this hurricane has been rainfall. All right, there's going to be flooding. Already seeing some pretty decent rainfall totals, especially in southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. I see around 3 to 4 inches in spots like Taylor, Lafayette, and Suwannee counties as well. We're talking around 2 to 3 inches as you head a little bit further towards the north, but those heavier rain bands are also moving that way, so expect those rainfall totals to pick up. You look at the line from around Thomas County all the way down through Tallahassee and Wakulla County. Now we're talking about 1 to 2 inches. You head further west than that, and it's really spotty. Most spots less than an inch so far. Again, not expecting a whole lot of rain on this side. We still got a tornado watch in place until 6 a.m., and that's just because some of those outer bands, they've had a history of producing those little brief spin-up tornadoes. So far, so good. We haven't seen any for our area, but that's absolutely something that Rob and I are watching for, and if one does start to pop up, we'll be right here immediately. But again, so far so good in that department. This is a really cool view, all right? These are our wind velocities. It's gonna tell us who's getting the worst of the wind right now. Where you see the greens and the blues, that's the wind that's rotating towards the radar site at the Tallahassee airport. Where you see these red winds, those are the winds that are moving away. So it shows you that counterclockwise rotation around the center of circulation that's just offshore right now. You start to get into these blues, and that's where the winds are definitely picking up. So spots like Taylor, Lafayette, Suwannee, Hamilton, Madison County, even now into Jefferson a little bit in the Big Bend, that's where we're seeing probably the biggest wind gusts. Let's go ahead and check these out. Let's start with sustained winds, all right? These are the longer duration type winds, not just those short bursts. So these are going to be a little bit lower. Definitely highest near the center of the storm, got about 30 mile per hour sustained winds in Perry, 21 mile per hour sustained winds in Tallahassee, 15 in Apalachicola, I see 18 in Valdosta, 17 in Bainbridge right now. So far so good in that department as well. The wind gusts are what could cause a little bit of problem, all right? These are the ones that could knock out some power. These are the ones that could knock down some tree limbs and cause some debris out there. Of course, again, you're gonna see the biggest wind gusts down by the coast. Look at Alligator Point, 50 mile per hour wind gust there. That's enough to do a little bit of damage. 46 miles per hour in Perry. There's a 40 mile per hour wind gust in Lafayette. Even Madison High, which is inland, got a wind gust of 42 miles an hour. There's one 36 miles per hour in Tallahassee. So those wind gusts are absolutely picking up, and that's why it is no longer a good idea to be out on the roadways, because you catch one of those wind gusts and all of a sudden it's a whole lot different than just those little normal breezy sustained winds that we got going on right now. Let's check out what our winds will be doing over the next several hours. They're going to continue to pick up, all right? Once Debby moves onshore and starts to get closer and closer to more of our communities, well, we're going to be closer to that wind field, so the wind gusts will start to pick up, especially by the coast and closest to the storm. That's where we could see those potentially hurricane force wind gusts, maybe around 70, close to 80 miles per hour, kind of on the high side there. Again, I think we're looking more so like 40 to 60 near the coast, especially as it moves on in. You look at Perry, this model's picking up a wind gust of over 70 miles an hour. It just goes to show you it's definitely a possibility, and that's the good thing that we have a hurricane warning in place, so we've been preparing for that. Everything you see here, we've prepared for, nothing that we have not expected. Now you're going to notice those winds start to slowly move further north where you get the most wind gusts, all right? So by this afternoon, we're sitting around 4 p.m. That's when the center of our storms get a little bit closer to the state line. So spots like Valdosta, Live Oak, you could start to get those big wind gusts. Even spots like Clinch, Eccles County there, you don't really have a little icon for it. You got one in Homerville, but you're still going to be seeing some big wind gusts, and even further west still. This is not going to be a quick moving storm, so it's going to be rainy and it is going to be windy pretty much the entirety of the day today, unless you're far out to our west. That's where you may not notice too much of any conditions. By the time we get to tonight, that's when the storm is kind of starting to move out of our area, and then it's gone by tomorrow morning. It's still going to be quite breezy out there, just a little bit of that gradient wind working in. Let's check out a futurecast just to kind of picture it all and put it in more into perspective. Again, the exact track of this is going to change a little bit. There's just one computer model. There's a bunch out of there. They all say tiny little differences. I think this one might just go a little bit too slow for my liking, but it does give you a good idea. The center of the storm moves onshore. You've got the big rain bands on the north and just around the center, especially on the eastern half of this thing, and you still have the sharp cutoff to our western communities that are not going to pick up a whole lot of rain. This will continue moving inland, damaging winds, a big problem at this point for southeastern reaches of the Big Bend and south central Georgia as well. Lots and lots of rain continuing to pile up, causing flooding concerns, especially to the east of Thomasville and Tallahassee, and then eventually this thing will want to cross the state line by the time we get late this afternoon, perhaps even early this evening, and then eventually we say goodbye, Debby, by the time we wake up Tuesday morning. Could still be a little bit of rain, especially the further north and east that you are, but most of us, I suspect, should be done with those impacts, besides it being just a little bit breezy. This particular model doing a good job at picking up how much rainfall we still have to go, all right, except for a few exceptions. You see down here by the Taylor County coast and Perry, it's kind of factoring in the center of the eye passing over, so that means it's not accounting for as much rain. There should be a little bit more that develops there. You look at spots, especially our eastern communities, we're still expecting rainfall totals of around 8 to 12 inches. And yes, that is enough to definitely cause some flooding problems. You head further west, we've got an additional about 4 to 8 inches left to go. You head even further west and perhaps 2 inches or less. Again, you got that sharp cutoff. A couple more things to talk about. We'll talk about storm surge. Again, this is definitely starting to ramp up. We'll look at the tide times in just a second because that does come into play. This is the potential peak storm surge given to us. So this shows you kind of the worst case scenario. So that's 6 to 10 feet along the Taylor, Jefferson, Wakulla County coastline. You're talking about 4 to 6 feet as you head further down towards the south and west near spots like Franklin County. Again, storm surge occurs because you have the hurricane moving up into the Appalachia Bay. It's pushing water into the bay, and also, depending on exactly where the storm sets up, you've got the winds on the south and out of the west, and that just continues to pile up water into the coastline as well. So that's absolutely something we'll be watching for over the next few hours as Debby continues to move onshore. The tides do play into it. They're working a little bit in our favor today in some spots, like Steinhatchee, like St. Mark's, where we already had high tide. So at this point, the water is going out as it normally would. Of course, you still got that storm surge piling on in, but it's better than if the high tide hadn't gotten here yet and we were still piling up water. Like in Apalachicola, the high tide is still a little bit later on, so you still got that tide flowing in that'll add on a little bit to that already current storm surge. So just key takeaways from what we talked about. We're still following our tropical storm and hurricane warnings. We know what to expect from those winds. We're going to have the more damaging wind gusts closer to the center of the storm, southeastern portions of the Big Bend up into south central Georgia. We talked about storm surge. We know the rainfall total is going to cut off a lot further west, but it's going to really pile up for our eastern Big Bend counties and up into spots like Valdosta in and around Lowndes County. We still got that tornado watch in place. We're watching for those, but so far so good in that department. Got a whole lot more updates coming to you. Rob will be up next, but for now, let's hand it back to Lenitra and Madison.
All right, thanks so much, Josh. We're already, well, this is a live view at Alligator Point. We're looking live. You can see that wind and rain out there already going this morning.
That's right. It's no joke out there right now. Hopefully, if you were traveling this morning, you've gotten to the point where you are going to stay and ride out the rest of the storm.
Yeah, and we've switched now. This is a live view at the Ocklawakanee Bay. So this is a live look there of what things are looking like. And again, you still see that rain coming down, the raindrops going across that camera lens there.
And it's always so strange whenever you're trying to look at a camera that's outside, right? So you see those conditions out there, but it's really hard to see those conditions, and it kind of makes for a weird ambiance when you're out there, right? Because it's dark and it's windy and it's raining, and you can't really see what is actually happening out there.
Indeed, and that's why they are asking people to stay inside to be safe. We're already learning of 2 storm-related deaths, a woman and a 12-year-old boy boy from Crawfordville.
FHP says they were driving in Dixie County on wet roads last night when the crash happened. And it happened around 9:30 on US 19 near Northwest 483rd Avenue. That's about 10 miles from Steinhatchee. FHP says witnesses told troopers that the car lost control on those wet roads, hit a guardrail, and flipped. The woman and a 12-year-old died at the scene. A 14-year-old boy in the car survived, but he is in the hospital with serious injuries.
The Coast Guard successfully rescued 2 boaters on Sunday after their 34-foot sailing vessel lost its sail 73 miles off Boca Grande. Take a look at your screen there. This video shared by USCG shows the boaters adrift in wild weather. The rescue crews faced 15 to 20-foot seas, 50-knot winds, and low visibility when the boaters were rescued. The 2 boaters were rescued via helicopter, and no injuries were reported.
And thank goodness for that, because that could be a very different scene if they were out there right now. So this is video from Anna Maria Island yesterday, and you can definitely see the wind gusts picking up there. Those palm trees blowing in that wind, and of course the same views that we've seen from a couple of the cameras this morning. That rain really coming down, and that right there is a prime example of why we cannot drive right in those high waters.
That truck going by.
Yes, yeah. And so, I mean, that just stresses that importance. You can see that water and how it's standing on those roads in some of these areas. Again, this is from Anna Maria Island yesterday, and you really just have to find that safe place, right, and stay there to ride out the storm until some of those floodwaters go down.
Definitely. You never know. That truck made it by, at least in that spot, but you don't want to take any chances out there. Now let's take a look at some video from Clearwater. Again, high flood waters, and cars, are engulfed by that flooding. They're stuck. And that's what happens a lot of times when you're dealing with the flooding. And so hopefully the people were able to get out, but there are times when folks are trapped in their cars, when they're in situations like that, and some are able to get out and some aren't.
And it looks like those may be apartments or some kind of, there's definitely a building in the background of sorts, so hopefully they were able to evacuate as well and heeded to those warnings that were sent by local officials, because as we know, much of the state of Florida has been under a state of emergency, and a lot of our local officials have issued mandatory evacuations. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Gulfport video from Pinellas County, and we can see strong winds and high tides there as well. I don't know, that looks like it may be some kind of blow-up kayak or canoe out there.
Yeah, not sure the official term for that. But and then there's some type of boat there, sailboat, I guess.
You can see the water just splashing against that walkway right there as well. So those waters definitely nothing to mess with either.
My, it can get serious out there with those strong winds and water. All right, we're going to take a live look now. That was video before, but now here is a live look at Steinhatchee. Again, that coastal area in Taylor County. Picking up even more, it seems.
Picking up. As the hours and hours go by, we'll see views like this in much of the Big Bend, right? And then hopefully things kind of slow down when it gets to South Georgia. But this, again, a live view out at Steinhatchee. You can see that wind and that water just ripping across what looks like to be a pier out there with some lights in the distance. That's a boat ramp out there, we're being told. So it really looks like it's just pounding on that boat ramp.
Indeed. We're going to go ahead and check in with Rob again to see what the latest is on the forecast and the tracking of all of this. Rob, it does look pretty serious anyway, but what can you tell us right now?
Yeah, one of the things we're going to see video like that from areas in our region, right? We're going to see that in some spots, and then we'll find cameras in other locations, and it's not even going to be raining outside. So that's going to be the real night and day difference to east and west with this very particular storm. But places like Steinhatchee that are getting real close to that core, that's where we're going to find the biggest wind, the heaviest rain, and that's where we're going to continue to wonder about that storm surge. And as the sun comes up, we're going to be able to see that. I suspect those waters are going to be rising up against the coast in many locations. winds. This is a real close-up view of the core of Hurricane Debby. And you can see maybe some of that is on land already between Horseshoe Beach and Steenhatchee. This last advisory changed that heading a little tiny bit from due north, the way it's been, to a little bit east of due north. And it feels like since yesterday afternoon, there's been a little shift from northwest to north to northeast. And that shift is going to change some of the location of landfall, the timing of the landfall. Remember that Florida coast is kind of irregularly shaped, and so some areas stick out a little bit more. But the bottom line here is there's some serious rain coming down in some spots, but not all spots. Here's how it's looked over the past couple of hours. And that core maybe getting a little elongated at times, wobbling a little tiny bit, but it certainly does look like it's moving more northeast and getting really, really close to right up there on that dividing line between the two counties of Taylor and Dixie. So we'll continue to watch this over the next little while and see if they do name an official landfall. The 5 o'clock information came in, still calling that core and those winds in that small core around 80 miles per hour. Now that doesn't mean it's 80 miles per hour everywhere that's getting rain. As a matter of fact, only in a very small little section, and the further away from that core you get, the much weaker those winds are and will be. And it's going to be areas a little east of that center that find some of those strongest winds. So places like Keaton Beach, like Steenhatchee, maybe up towards a little bit further north, not quite to Perry, but that's where we're going to find some of those stronger winds. And for the most part, those are going to be in some gusts more than sustained winds. The more sustained winds are going to be higher in elevation off the surface of the earth. This storm is moving at 10 miles per hour, really, really slowly. And that's why we're expecting those big-time rainfall amounts, especially if it takes a whole day to just get across our parts of North Florida and South Georgia. And that likely means we're going to get rain for that entire time. And then as it makes its way up more of the East Coast over the next 2 or 3 or 4 days, going to be big rain, and we're going to continue hearing about this storm the whole while. We do have several watches and warnings. As a matter of fact, it's almost all warnings for most of our area. The watches are our far northwestern spots, well removed from that core and well removed from where the strongest winds and rains are going to be. We've got tropical storm warnings in all the orange shaded areas, and that's like inland Franklin, and that's in Liberty and Gadsden and Leon and Thomas and areas west. And we have those hurricane warnings for coastal Franklin and Wakulla and Jefferson and Brooks County and areas east. Closer to the core, we expect the hurricane-like conditions. That's why we have the hurricane warnings. Farther from the core, especially west, we're expecting less severe conditions, tropical storm-like. And the difference is a 39 mile per hour sustained wind and a 74 mile per hour sustained wind. There's a lot of range in between, and a lot of us are probably going to be more in that 20 to 40 mile per hour sustained winds throughout the day today. But some of those locations, especially closest to the core, yeah, it's going to be windier than that for sure. Now, around the Big Bend, that's where we've got all those storm surge warnings. We are expecting that water to pile up maybe up to 10 feet or 12 feet in spots, especially from maybe near Keaton Beach down through Steenhatchee. So these are going to be the spots closest to the core again that are going to have the biggest push of water up against land. And we had our high tides not too long ago, so the tides are technically going out, but of course, as that storm gets closer, it's pushing that water up against the shore, so it's going to fight the tide, and we're going to have that much higher than normal high tide, even as our tides are going down. So this is the storm surge time, this and for the next hour or two, and as the sun comes up, we'll get a better look on that too. The possibility for tornadoes, it definitely exists. Anytime you get a landfalling tropical system, just the way the storms spin, you can get some rotating storms. Until 6 o'clock, that's where this current watch goes. I suspect there'll be additions to this watch and extensions of this watch, but a lot of it is for our easternmost areas only, because that's going to be where the strongest of the weather is, that eastern side of the core. Now, I think a lot of areas have flooding concerns because there's going to be so much rain, and that's one of our main deals. So much rain on already saturated soil and swollen rivers and streams, that's going to make for flooding concerns. On the computer model, as we see it move through, you see how slow it's going across. I mean, we're talking Tuesday night, and we still see it on the screen. So some of these tropical systems come, go, and are done. This one looks like it wants to linger. Currently, most of our sustained winds, these 1 to 2 minute average winds, are in that 15 to 25 mile per hour range. Something we'd call windy for sure, but not what we associate tropical weather with. We expect more. But this is not going to be a prolific wind storm. This is going to be a prolific rain storm, and there's a big difference. Just like there's a big difference when we talk about those wind gusts. Those are those 2-3 second bursts, and that's where we're going to feel the strongest. That's what's going to knock power out. That's what's going to knock tree limbs down, especially the soaked ones from all the rains. And we see some spots like Alligator Point, up to 46 mile per hour wind gusts. Perry up to 41 mile per hour. Madison High School up to 42 mile per hour wind gust. So yeah, those are incredibly dangerous, by the way, even in the 40s. You don't have to get up over 75 to be dangerous. So we've got lots to keep our eyes on, and there's going to be more of that throughout the day today with this very slow moving system, very, very slow, just creeping its way now east of north. I don't think it's northeast just yet, but that current heading at 15 degrees is just a little bit east of north. So it has continued that shift since yesterday, and the more that it does, the sooner it gets over land. Now, while that's a good thing because that limits the time over those warm waters where it can get stronger, but what it also does is it tucks in a little bit sooner and should start to weaken a little bit sooner. Once you cut this system off from its fuel source, that's those warm waters, now it's got a chance for some weakening. It doesn't weaken immediately. Usually you need some other factors to beat it up at times. We don't see that drier air in the upper part of the atmosphere. We don't see some of that wind shear, some of those other weather terms that we throw around at you when we talk about what strengthens or weakens a tropical system. But as it gets off of the water and it gets cut off from that fuel supply, it's harder to keep reestablishing itself, and that does usually weaken it, even if it weakens it slowly. And of course, the slower this moves, not only does area get big time rain and those winds, but that's when those water levels start to pile up. And we could be talking about some rainfall numbers that are going to be much, much higher than just a couple of inches. Some of our areas, especially when you get east of Jefferson County, I think we could be talking rain that measures in a foot or more. When you get to maybe like Gadsden County, Decatur County, might not be a lot of rain at all. And that's going to be the situation here, is east to west, very different based on how close to that core and which side of the storm that you're on. This is not a massive storm where there's just so much everywhere. It's a good size, and it's a couple of 100 miles from top to bottom. But it's not one of those that really spreads out all along the Gulf Coast and gives big rain to the entire area. Right now, it's going to be areas to the east, the Suwannee River Valley, the Nature Coast, spots from Madison County and Taylor County where we do not need big rains. But that's where they're going to fall, and that's what we're going to be dealing with. Over the past 24 hours, I can see some spots in the purples and reds and even oranges that are going to be some computer estimations of maybe 4 to 6 to 8 inches of rain already. There were spots down in central Florida, near Tampa, near Clearwater, near St. Petersburg, that got over a foot of rain because it moved so slow, and that stayed just close enough to the outer side of that core where those big rain bands continued to dump big rains. So areas to our east, the I-75 corridor, are going to have the most chances for the most rain for most of today. This is going to take all day to move north. We'd love it to speed up and move a little bit faster. Hopefully it will. But right now all the indications are it's not going to move that fast at all. And similarly, all the indications are there are going to be some spots that don't get a lot of rain at all, and it'll be like, what's going on? I thought we had a hurricane out there. We do. It's just not one of those hurricanes that spreads 300 miles and gets everybody with the same kind of weather. A different kind of setup. Each storm is individual and different. Each one brings its own set of troubles, and each one brings its own set of circumstances. This one is going to be one of those where a lot of the rain is near the core and east, and not much spreads back to the west, and it's not moving west. It's moving back to the north and to the northeast, so it will take those bigger rains and push them across parts of the North Florida Peninsula and into coastal parts of South Georgia and eventually into South Carolina. That's where the big rains will go, even with this thing moving very, very slowly. It's not coming back across the central parts of our area. When you look at it on the satellite, on the wider picture, you can see that there's that group, maybe a couple of 100 miles of top to bottom where it is, and maybe 1 or 2 bands that extend a little further south, but a lot of it is blowing off to the east, and that's the way it's going to go. And then a very sharp gradient back behind it. You get over towards Pensacola, you get up into parts of central Alabama, there's nothing going on. And even in parts of our part of the Panhandle or our parts of southwest Georgia, there's very little going on from this. Maybe a little bit breezy and the occasional shower. That's all. But areas east, certainly A lot going on with this. Now, we're going to have lots more about this. We're going to go through the morning. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about this nonstop for the next couple of hours. I think we're going to be hearing about landfall very soon, and once we get past that, now we start to look for some weakening. But the story today is going to be all about Debby and all about the rain that it brings, and of course, some of that storm surge. We've got crews all over the place. They'll be able to show us what it looks like in those locations. That will be really neat to see. Let's get back to the news desk and see what's going on all around the area.
All right, Rob, thank you so much for that. We want to go ahead and take a live look out from Perry. This is where our Stacey Inez is located. This is a live picture view right there of the situation that's going on there. As she mentioned earlier, yep, there's that light flickering on and off. You know, and a lot of our viewers on Facebook have already mentioned spots in Perry being without power. Now, we can see some lights on there for now, which is great news, but a lot of our viewers in Perry have mentioned being without power.
Wow. And of course, that was expected to happen, you know, with the wind and the rain that's out there right now. So, you know, everyone just make sure to be safe out there.
And we want to go ahead and send things out now to our Abrea Ruffin, who's in Steinhatchee for us right now. Abrea, when we checked in with you earlier, you had talked about the rain slapping the water. We could see the water moving and grooving out there, too. What are you looking at right now?
Well, Madison, Lenitra, we actually just lost power. The wind gusts are picking up, and it's pretty strong out here. You can see we're in complete darkness. We want to take a look at the water over there. You can see that the rain and the wind still blowing that across the water. Residents want to make sure they stay inside, especially as the power is out. We've seen a few pieces of debris flying, and there's still a possibility for trees to come down and out of that wet soil. Along the river, that water is very rough, and you can see the dock kind of swaying and moving along with it. We're still not seeing any flooding just yet. Ride it out, and we'll provide some more updates for you guys soon. Reporting in Steinhatchee, Abrea Ruffin, WCTV Eyewitness News.
Abrea, with that flashlight out there, she said the power is out where she is. Thank you so much, Abrea. Again, that's in Steinhatchee, the coastal area of Taylor County. So things are happening.
That's right.
Things are happening.
They're only going to be picking up more and more.
And so we're going to go ahead and check in with Cameron right now.
Okay, we're clear.
All right. And so we'll see how things are going with him.
so.
He's out and about right now as well. As we mentioned, we do have team coverage with different field crews in much of our anticipated
I think
areas. So
Sabrina told,
our first alert meteorologist,
Savannah
Cameron
and Allison,
Aaron,
when
he's
they
in
power down
Monticello
house.
right now.
Yeah, and I believe last I heard he was going to be at a center there, or a storm shelter there, where residents are going to be taking up shop as well, maybe some that fled from some other areas. Oh, he sounds like he may have switched locations, and he's actually in downtown Monticello. Cameron, go ahead and give us the latest.
Yeah, Madison, we are live in downtown Monticello. Behind me is the Jefferson County Courthouse. You can see the flag back there whipping in the wind as we speak. Not much going on so far here in downtown Monticello besides the rain and the breezy winds. Not overly terrible at this point, but there is a pretty substantial difference between Jefferson County and Leon County, just right down the road on I-10. Once you cross into Jefferson County, like Rob mentioned just a few minutes ago, a really big difference on the western side of that circulation. But again, here in downtown Monticello, as we were rolling in, we actually saw a power flash back in the distance. So some areas are without power at this point in Monticello. Here in downtown, looks like we have power on at this point. We also have a few people on the road this morning. And again, if you don't have to be on the road, best bet is to just stay at home, stay off the roads as that heavy rain and that gusty wind rolls through the Big Bend in South Georgia. Not only a coastal situation, but also an inland situation, as those hurricane warnings also extend inland into South Georgia at this point. But again, we're going to be here all morning long, and we'll keep you posted in Monticello as anything develops over here in Jefferson County.
All right, Cameron, thank you so much for that. And I know a lot of people in Monticello are also in our Facebook comments as well, just giving us updates about what they're seeing and what they're hearing. So thank you so much, Cameron. I know they appreciate having you out there as well right now.
Yes, and it's good to see that there are people who are staying away, trying to, stay off those roads out there.
And Governor Ron DeSantis making a statement ahead of Debbie's landfall, saying that utility linemen are ready to respond to storm and work around the clock to restore power quickly and as soon as the weather conditions allow them to.
And President Biden approving a federal emergency declaration yesterday ahead of Hurricane Debbie's landfall. That opens up federal resources for state and local responses efforts. It also means federal agencies like FEMA can start coordinating disaster relief. And the order applies to about 60 Florida counties, including the Big Bend. So good news there. They are preparing and getting those resources ready in case they are needed.
Absolutely. That way there's no delay, right? So as soon as the storm passes, people can be boots on the ground and get to those areas that are the hardest hit to supply those resources to those people that are in need.
The sooner the better, of course.
That's right. Let's go ahead and check back in with meteorologist Josh Green to see kind of where things are right now. Josh.
Yeah, Madison, Lenitra, you guys were just talking about it. All right, we are prepared. All right, we absolutely are. At this point, it's a waiting game. We're being patient. Unfortunately, Debbie is not going to be a quick-moving storm, all right? It's not going to be in any rush. It is going to take its sweet time trying to make its way through North Florida, and then eventually it's even going to take several hours until it makes its way across the state line into South Georgia. I want you to note the track over the past 24 hours or so. It's been very interesting, all right? We had a little bit of a westward shift there, and then bang, a big shift to the east, and that ultimately kind of altered that forecast track to, at this point, it is now heading more so into that Taylor County coastline really close to Dixie County as well. Let's go ahead and get a zoomed in look at the radar picture. Here it is, Hurricane Debbie up close and personal. What do we got going on here? Well, the biggest rain bands are making their way onshore right now. Spots like Cross City, Steinhatchee, Keaton Beach, they're getting the worst of it. This is where you're going to have those powerful wind gusts. This is where you're going to have a lot of heavy rain. This is the center of circulation. Now, it's moving a little bit due north. It's also shifting a little east. So nonetheless, whether it makes landfall in 30 minutes, an hour and a half, we've got the worst of the impact starting to move onshore into southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. We zoom out a little bit, get an idea of what's going on rainfall-wise across more of our area, where you see the yellows and the oranges and even the reds at some points. That's going to be the heavier stuff, all right? And especially when you factor in those winds, it's going to be that rain that sometimes is kind of blowing sideways at you, and it's absolutely going to be piling up a lot over the next several hours, especially for the eastern Big Bend in south central Georgia. You take your attention on the west side of the storm, which is going to be on this side, a little bit of a different story. All right, the rain does not extend too far out. We've got maybe some light rain, perhaps some heavier stuff trying to make its way into spots like Thomasville down through Tallahassee and Crawfordville, but for now, it is still just light rain. You head even further west than that, spots like Bainbridge and Quincy, Seminole Miller County there in southwest Georgia, no rain at all. All right, so this is definitely a different kind of storm depending on where you are. You get a zoomed out look. This will show you some of the rainfall totals over the past 24 hours. Definitely starting to add up. We're about 4 inches now in a lot of Taylor, Lafayette, and Suwannee counties. About 3 inches. You head further north towards Madison, Hamilton, Eccles, and Lowndes County. Once you get into that line of like Thomasville, Tallahassee, Crawfordville, it's about 1 to 2 inches, and it's less than that as you head further west. Let's get a look at the latest futurecast from one computer model. Again, there's a bunch of different computer models, and they'll all show you different paths, different timings. This is just going to give us a good idea of where it's going to be traveling and how slow it's going to be traveling. So we know it's going to move onshore over the next couple of hours or so. The heaviest rain bands setting up in eastern reaches of the Big Bend up through south central Georgia, and those will extend a little bit west as well. It's just not very far west. You notice light rain as you head further towards the western communities of our area. This will continue slowly moving towards the north and towards the east through the morning hours, eventually making its way closer to the state line, probably after the lunch hour, by the time we get to this afternoon. And then eventually, by the time we get to, say, Monday tonight evening, that's when things start to move a little bit further away. We're crossing over the state line. I think this particular model just slows things down a little too much for my liking. And by the time we get to overnight tonight, wake up early Tuesday morning, that's when Debbie will start to move out of our area. Now, you talk a little bit about intensity. When these tropical systems move onshore, they're going to lose it, all right? They're not going to be allowed to strengthen anymore. It will weaken at some point after it moves onshore. It doesn't have all that warm, open ocean water to tap into that's helped it strengthen over the past 24 hours. By the time we wake up Tuesday morning, there could still certainly be a little bit of rain for further north and east that you go, but the center of the storm will be gone off to our north and east. It is still going to be breezy out there throughout the day on Tuesday. Let's talk a little bit about how much rain is expected still to come. The Weather Prediction Center has placed the eastern third of our area under a high risk of excessive rainfall. That's pretty rare, and I'll show you why when we look at some of the rainfall totals. That decreases to a moderate risk as you head towards Thomasville, Tallahassee, and it's a slight risk for our western counties. Again, not expecting too much rain once you get over there, and especially nothing at all once you get past the Apalachicola River. Here's one of the models showing us the forecasted rainfall totals. It does a good job of showing us the potential for a lot of rain still to come on top of the already couple of inches that we've picked up in some of these spots. So we're looking at around 8 to 12 inches for our eastern counties. I know it only says 2.5 inches in Perry. That's because this model is accounting for the eye of the storm to pass over. Expect more rain to come than that in Taylor County. As you head further west, we've got about another additional, say, 3 to 6 inches of rain. As you head even further more west, perhaps we're only talking about maybe a couple more inches at the most. So again, a big cutoff in terms of where all of the flooding rain is going to end up being a bigger issue, and that's going to be for our eastern counties. Here's check in on some of the wind speeds out there. These are our sustained winds, okay? So these are longer than those short bursts that we call wind gusts. We'll check in on those, but in terms of sustained winds right now, 31 miles per hour in Perry. That's, of course, closer to the center of Debby. 21 miles per hour in Tallahassee and in Valdosta. I see 16 miles per hour on the board in Bainbridge and in Quincy. You notice all of our winds coming in from the east and from the north, and that's because our storm rotates counterclockwise. So the winds kind of make that sort of direction. And once Debby starts to move a little bit more towards the north and east, we'll start to see the winds shift. Here we go. Let's put this all into motion again. These are our forecasted sustained winds. Once it moves onshore, then we're talking about some true sustained tropical storm force winds, 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. Might be a little bit on the high side in terms of the sustained winds. Once you head into the southeastern reaches of the Big Bend, it's going to be a little bit less the further west that you go. As we head towards Monday afternoon, those winds will start to pick up a little bit further north. That's just because the center of the storm continues to move north, and it's still going to remain windy pretty much all day today because it is such a slow-moving storm. So I wouldn't be in too much of a rush to get out there on the roadways if you don't need to. Today's definitely one of those days. Just go ahead and hang out inside. You get up tomorrow morning, things are good to go. Just make sure you check in on some of those flooded roadways. Now, we can talk about wind gusts. These are going to be a little bit higher because these are those shorter bursts of wind, all right? They only last a few seconds. Spots like down in Lafayette County, 47 mile per hour wind gust coming in at the high school there. 41 mile per hour wind gust in Perry. There's a 44 mile per hour wind gust at Alligator Point. You've got a 39 mile per hour wind gust in Valdosta and at Madison High, 35 there in Live Oak, even 36 in Tallahassee, all right? These are wind gusts that can absolutely cause a little bit of damage, all right? It can bring down some loose limbs. They can cause some power outages as well. I know we've already got a bunch of those, especially the further south and east that you go. The futurecast for our wind gusts is going to look pretty similar to what our sustained winds will be. They're just going to be a little bit higher, all right? We're talking wind gusts once this thing moves into southeastern reaches of the Big Bend around 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. So a little bit higher than what our actual sustained winds will be. If we see anything close to hurricane force wind gusts, it's most likely going to be confined to the coast or maybe just immediately onshore because, like we said, once the storm moves onshore, it will start to slowly weaken. So we're not going to see those same kind of wind speeds once it moves further north versus what it's producing right now as it still sits offshore. As we head towards this afternoon, those wind gusts start to pick up as you head further north as the center of the storm continues to move further north. And then eventually by this evening, that's when the wind gust starts to subside, especially further west. And then by the time we get to tomorrow morning, that's when the storm starts to move on out. Last little piece of information we'll talk about is that peak storm surge. Again, this is the worst case scenario forecast, all right? So for Taylor County, that sits at 6 to 10 feet. We'll have to check from the 5 o'clock update if these changed at all. Still sits at 4 to 6 feet for Franklin County. So we're watching that closely, absolutely. We already had some of those evacuation orders put in place in preparation. So everything we're seeing right now is what was prepared for. Our tide times are going to show you exactly if the water's moving in or moving out. It makes a big difference when it comes to storm surge. In spots like St. Mark's and in Steinhatchee, we already had high tide. So that means that we're moving into low tide. The water is naturally starting to recede, but of course you've already got those waters piling back in because of the storm surge. If we were heading into a high tide, it'd be a little bit worse because then the water is naturally moving onshore as the storm surge comes in. Kind of the situation in Apalachicola, all right? But again, the storm surge there is not going to be as bad as what it will be, more so on the east side of the storm, like where Taylor and Dixie County are. All right, so again, here's a quick view of that radar picture. We're watching closely. There's the center of the storm making its way very close to the shoreline in and around that southern reach of Taylor County and northern Dixie County. We'll continue to monitor things on our end, but for now, let's hand it back to Madison and Lenitra.
Josh, and you know, Lenitra, one thing I did want to mention this morning is it's not even been a year since Hurricane Idalia made landfall in much of these areas. So receiving that rain right now is not something that many of these people want to see because we're still having tarps on roofs. Just last week, repairs started to be made to a lot of the high schools and elementary schools in Taylor County, right? So you've got those tarps and then heavy rainfall on top of that. It's not the situation people are hoping for this morning for sure.
Right, not excited to hear this news at all. But of course, those are the people who are really prepared.
That's right.
They know what can happen. And so it's good to know that many people are taking heed of any warnings, watches, and just the information that we've been trying to provide.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And speaking of, we want to check in with our Stacey Inez, who is with us in Perry this morning. Stacey, what are you looking at right now? Have things changed? What's the situation there?
Well, in terms of have things changed, I think the biggest thing that we're looking at right now is the strong winds. So we checked in about 30 minutes ago with you guys, and we mentioned the wind and the rain, but just in that time period, the wind has significantly picked up. We've noticed a lot of large wind gusts as well. Of course, the power, that light over there is still flickering. There's still a lot of heavy winds and rain, and you guys mentioned the tarps on roofs, people still trying to recover. I mean, we were just here a couple of weeks ago because the school district is trying to repair the roof before the kids go back to school here in Taylor County. And so that recovery process from Hurricane Idalia is still very much in action. Of course, we're here, though, off of Highway 98, as you mentioned, in Perry. And right now, those are the two things that we're watching. The wind consistently picking up, and of course, the rain has been steady all morning. And we do know that emergency management officials, they are expecting some flooding. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention it again, if you do not have to be out, just don't. Don't be on the roads at this time because they are not sending out first responders until it is safe to do so once that storm does roll in. But of course, we'll be here monitoring things throughout the morning. We'll keep checking back as the conditions change throughout the morning. We'll keep you updated here. But for now, Madison and Lenitra, I'll send it back to you guys.
Now, Stacey, I do understand that you've been there since yesterday, right? So can you kind of just break down how things have changed since this time? Maybe yesterday, right? Has the winds and the rains obviously picked up? What has the mood of the people in Perry been like over the course of, let's say, the past 24 hours?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, of course, there are a handful of people still preparing, and as we've been talking about Hurricane Idalia, we did speak with some people who are taking this very seriously, obviously, with the recovery process, getting sandbags and things like that from the sheriff's office locations. And so on that front, that's how we've spoken to people there. But then also, when it comes to the evacuation, the emergency management said they really want people to take that seriously. They wanted people to take that seriously, and they're saying if you're not, to make sure that you are as safe as possible, make sure you have a plan just in case. But from yesterday to today, what we've seen, a significant change. Obviously, the wind picked up this morning, as I keep mentioning, and yesterday when we drove in, cloudy, very little rain. This morning, not the same story, and that's again why we want to make sure people are just as safe as possible. Madison, Lenitra.
Thanks, Stacey. It is good to hear that people are taking it seriously. So I'm glad you see that big difference there. All right, well, we will also check in with Savannah right now. Savannah is in St. Mark's, and of course, that's an area that's used to flooding and storm surge there. So we'll check to see how things look now with Savannah.
It actually looks like we lost contact with Savannah, but earlier when we spoke with her, she talked about how windy it was out there, right? Matter of fact, when she first got out there, she had a hat on her head, and she said while she stood out there that her hat actually flew off of her head, and you could hear the wind, just how hard it was blowing behind her, right? So she was out there by the water too, and we could see those shots of the rain picking up, but really the wind was really the situation she kind of harped on while she was out there. So we can hope we can get her back and get a update. Actually, she just sent an update to us right now, so let's see if I can get it pulled up. Okay, so it's the wind is really, it seems like that what's going on out there.
Right.
She says that she's getting some stronger gusts.
Right.
So hopefully they're staying safe during this time.
All right, and let's go ahead and take a look at the power outages in our area. This is from Swanee Valley Electric. So, you know, as we know, that there are some spots in our region that have already been hit with those power outages. Swanee County is 56% out right now. That's 56% in Swanee County. 55% in Lafayette County.
So just when we were checking power outages at the top of the 5 o'clock hour, right, we were looking at numbers only about in the 20s. So just within the last hour, those numbers have over doubled, right? So we're really seeing those outages start to pick up, right, as long as the wind gusts and that rain picks up as well in some of our viewing area.
Indeed. So again, be careful out there, and hopefully for those who aren't able to see us on television, they still have those devices.
That's right.
Already had them charged up, so they can stay tuned to us on the news app, our weather app, and our Facebook page, because we got you covered all the way around.
That's right. And we're going to be here with you for all morning long until Debby passes. We're going to check back in with meteorologist Rob Nucatola for a look at the latest. Rob?
All right, guys, let's get to it. National Hurricane Center hasn't called landfall yet. They say very near landfall. I can see some of those heavier rain bands that are near Cross City and maybe up towards Keaton Beach. Got some decent rain around Mayo and High Springs. Chiefland may be in one of the spots where it's a little weaker between that first band and this one that's closer to the eye itself. Looks like right around Horseshoe Beach, maybe getting a little bit of a break in the eye right now, and that's where things will calm down for a little while as this continues to move now north and east, and that's really been the main direction for the past couple of hours, moving a little bit east of north, and as it wobbles just a smidge, I think they're going to call landfall very, very soon in southernmost parts of Taylor County or northernmost parts of Dixie County, so someplace real close to Steinhatchee is where it looks and feels like is going to be the official spot. But remember, we go east of there, and especially maybe about another 40 or 50 miles or more for the strongest winds and for the heaviest rains. And as that continues to lift to the north, those are going to be the areas. So near the I-75 corridor, and that's where we're going to find some of the biggest weather for the next couple of hours. This is all moving slow, 10 to 12 miles per hour, that's all. So it's going to take a good long while for this to continue exiting to the north. When it does eventually, I think it's going to bring a whole lot of rain to parts of southeastern Georgia and the Carolinas, and it's going to take its sweet old time to move on through parts of the south. We're going to be hearing about Debby and eventually what's left of Debby probably all week long for parts of the southeast and maybe even into the mid-Atlantic. We still have our current watches and warnings. We've got those hurricane warnings for a big chunk of the area, especially for Taylor County, for Madison County and east, where we're expecting those hurricane-like conditions. Storm surge, always a concern when you have something shaped like our coast and you have all that water coming this way. We did just pass all of the high tides earlier this morning, so the tides are trying to go back out. I've seen some reports of a couple of spots with some dry tides going on out there because of the water leaving. It'll come back later. But I think some of the bigger spots that would see the most potential surge, Taylor County, Dixie County, can be well up over 6 or 8 or even 10 feet. Now, we've seen a reduction in that tornado watch. The current one was till 6 a.m. Well, we're now past 6 a.m. It's about 6:08. So what we're going to find is areas farther to the east have the better threat for the rotating individual thunderstorm cells. I've been looking at the velocities throughout the morning, just trying to see some of those winds, and I do see elevated off the surface of the earth some winds up in that 70 or 80 mile per hour range at times, and I'm talking way upstairs. Then when that translates down, it gets much, much weaker. But I haven't seen anything that even resembles rotation, so that's great news. There was quite a bit of that over the peninsula yesterday. There was some along I-10 yesterday, but nothing in our area since, and it's nice when that threat gets smaller and smaller. I think for a lot of our area, it's just going to be a wet day and night. And that's why the flooding concern is going to be the bigger one. This is going to go until tomorrow, and it's probably going to extend longer than that, especially in some areas to the north where the flooding might even be more so as that storm brings so much rain to so many areas. Now, this flood watch does include Franklin County, Wakulla, Leon, and Grady counties and areas to the east. So we'll certainly be monitoring for all those rainfall totals as we go through the day. You can see how slowly, I mean, this is taking it more than 24 hours to get all the way across the area. So there's going to be a lot of rain to talk about with this before our winds shift a little bit. And with a little bit of luck, we pull in some drier and maybe even some less hot air for Wednesday and for Thursday. It would be nice if that starts on Tuesday, and maybe some of our northwestern spots will start that by Tuesday. So I do think there's going to be some improvements in the forecast, but we got to get through what's going to be a real wet day today too. The current winds out there, not crazy. We see a lot of them down below 20 miles per hour. And these are the 1 minute averages. Madison High School is checking in with a 30 mile per hour sustained wind. So that's windy for sure, but we've had windier. And we've had much gustier. We can see that in Perry, those wind gusts, those 2 or 3 second bursts, up to 45 miles per hour. At Lafayette High School, up to 42 miles per hour. So closer to where that core is, that's where we're going to find those strong winds. Remember, that core is only about 30 miles wide. So it's going to be a small area that gets those big winds. We'll hear about, but it's a hurricane and it's got 80 mile per hour winds, but that's in a very, very small spot. And a lot of that is elevated off the ground. As it translates down, it gets weaker. As you get away from the core, it gets much, much, much weaker. And it's going to be areas near that core and to the east. So back for Wakulla County and for Leon County and even up through Monticello and Thomasville. Yeah, we'll get some gusts, but I don't think it's going to be anything like they're going to find in places like Dixie and Taylor County and maybe up through Lafayette and Sewanee counties, where I know we don't need any more rain. We certainly don't. But that's where this is going, and this is going to be a big-time rain-making setup. I think it's going to be something that rains all day and maybe into the day tomorrow, especially as you get across I-10 and you start working your way up towards southeastern Georgia and eventually the Carolinas. For a lot of our area, there is a very clear and sharp back edge to the rain. Yeah, we've got some of those wraparound bands, and we're getting a good soaking in Monticello. We're getting a decent soaking in eastern parts of Thomas County. But if you start to get a little further back towards Grady County, western parts of Leon, Wakulla, it's barely raining at all. And I think that's going to be the case for a lot of us for a while today. We'll see if some of those bands do extend a little bit further back, but the farther west you go, you get into Decatur County, you get up towards Donaldsonville or way up towards Blakely or Dothan, Alabama, might not see any rain at all. Same when you get west of Quincy, get over towards Chattahoochee, we might not see any rain whatsoever, just a little breeze at times. So that's the difference from being east or west. So much rain near I-75, not a whole lot for the Apalachicola Riverside. Now, here's what it looks like for the past couple of hours. You can see that wobbly, elongated-looking core. Never had the tightest presentation or the most concentric-looking circle to it. So that was what was one of the things inhibiting this from getting much, much stronger. I do see some little spots where I can see some of the reds and oranges in there, so some of those really heavy downpours, and certainly some frequent lightning with some of that. But right now, we're watching this move very slowly to the north and east, and that means our easternmost areas, Taylor County, Madison County, parts of Lowndes County, and east, that's where we're going to have the biggest rains. We've already had some big rains. Where we see the purple colors on this map, that's 4 inches or more's worth of rain. And that's for a huge chunk of the Suwannee River Valley. But we've got some areas in the yellows and oranges and reds, and that's 8 and 10 inches worth of rain, and we are not done by a long shot. And I think we're going to see more of that spread north. So we're going to find a big part of the area over towards the I-75 corridor where we get some pretty big rains. And the flip side of that is you get a little bit more towards the middle of our viewing area, the Leon, Wakulla, Grady, Thomas County area. Maybe we pick up a couple inches, maybe when all is said and done. Get west of that, and we're probably not going to see very much rain at all. You even see the back edge of the cloud cover. So it's so heavily lopsided towards eastern parts of North Florida and southeastern Georgia, and much less farther back to the west, and it does look like that's going to be the way things play out. Here's what it looks like from top to bottom, and you can see that, yeah, there are some showers and some clouds that extend all the way up to the Carolinas already. If you look down to the south, there are still some that extend all the way down towards South Florida. So this is going to be one of those that takes a while to lift all the way through because there's so much of it. but it eventually will continue to lift off to the north and to the east. I suspect they're going to call landfall sometime real soon, someplace close to that Taylor and Dixie County coastline. That radar picture on the tropical version is going to show that so much of that rain, guys, has been off to the east. Now, we've got people stationed all over the place that'll be able to, especially in the next half hour when the sun starts coming up, to be able to show us a little bit better what's going on where you are. And I certainly think that the Taylor County and the Dixie County coast with that storm surge is going to be something to see. And I also expect areas from Taylor County through Madison County and a little bit more towards the I-75 area. That's where we're going to find some of those really big rainfall totals to go with some of that wind-driven rain too. And then we're going to look outside, even in Tallahassee, and find just some showers here and just some wind here, but nothing like they're seeing in other parts of the Big Bend, especially in our easternmost areas. I'm going to go back and check the computers, look for some new information. We've got lots more for you this morning. Let's send it back to the news desk.
All right, thanks, Rob, for all of that. We're going to check back in with our field crews right now, and we have Savannah in St. Mark's, and we're going to see how things are looking now. You keep checking in on them because there have been some changes even within the last hour or so.
Yeah, and Savannah, we tried to get with you just a moment ago, but we couldn't get your signal, so we're glad to see you. How are things looking?
Yeah, Madison, Lenitra, the wind has picked up a little bit here at St. Mark's. We've got some stronger gusts coming at us, and it's causing the rain to kind of fly at us sideways. So we're pretty drenched here. Our camera equipment is all locked down with sandbags to prevent it from falling over in the wind. And we are at the marina. There are a few boats here in the water. You can kind of hear them clanging around and bumping into the dock as they get pushed around by this wind. So conditions here have gotten just a little bit worse, but overall pretty similar to how they were when we last checked in with you, just a bit stronger winds. We haven't seen many cars on the road. It's pretty quiet here, which is a good thing. People staying inside, staying safe as this storm passes through. So we'll continue to keep you updated. But for now, Lenitra, Madison, back to you.
All right, and Savannah, you were mentioning those wind gusts picking up, and we do want people to stay inside. Of course, we keep saying that, but are people abiding by that?
Yes, we have not really seen, people out and about. I think we saw maybe one car driving by. So things are pretty quiet here, which is, as we said, definitely a good thing. We're the only ones out here at this hour. So, everyone, making sure they stay inside, stay safe. There is a shelter open here in Wakulla County at Crawfordville Elementary. So anyone who needs a safe place to stay, that is open. It's pet friendly, and they are going to be open for people who need some place to go. They opened up last night, and anyone who needs a place to stay can head over to the elementary school. There is currently an evacuation order for the coastal areas of Wakulla County, so St. Mark's and those areas. So people just really encouraged to stay inside or get to a shelter and get somewhere safe.
All right, of course, great advice as always. Thank you so much, Savannah.
And now we want to go ahead and check in with our Cody Butler, who is at the State Emergency Operations Center, with a breakdown of kind of what he's seeing and hearing while he's over there.
Yeah, Cody, I'm sure they have been busy lately. How are things looking right now?
Lenitra and Madison, people have been here around the clock for several days now. Florida Division of Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie gave an update to people and the staff on the floor of the room, kind of giving an update on what is going on right now. We do know that more than 33,000 people are without power right now. That's across the state. The state does have more than 9,000 feet of flood protection. They're putting these around power substations. The idea is to prevent these substations from flooding, trying to keep the power on as much as possible. That's been the big emphasis, and something new the state has not done before. They've seen success with hospitals during Hurricane Idalia and Hurricane Ian over the last couple years. They also have thousands of linemen across the state ready to go to restore power. Now, you might remember these people that are in the path of the storm were also in the path of the storm of Hurricane Idalia nearly a year ago. Governor Ron DeSantis said yesterday that the state is here to help.
So that's going to create challenges. But we responded then and got people back on their feet, and we will do that again with this storm.
The governor will be having a press conference here at 7:30 this morning here at the State Emergency Operations Center to give an update on the latest that the state is doing here for Hurricane Debby. Reporting live at the State Emergency Operations Center, Cody Butler, WCTV Eyewitness News.
Cody, thank you so much for that update. And I wanted to share just a little bit about that as well. You know, I got a message from a viewer this morning that said they wanted to share a piece of good news, right? So he was saying that the governor said that they had people situated and they're here to respond whenever things are needed. They said they were actually driving back from northern regions of the state, and they saw 18-wheelers full of supplies. They saw linemen heading in as well to be prepared. So it's nice to know that those boots are already on the ground. People are already working and waiting for them just to get that call, just to go ahead and get deployed to those situations that are needed.
Indeed, and that's why the state of emergency is so important, because they're making sure to get those resources that the city, county, state, federal assistance, you know, everyone is ready to go.
At all levels, from top to bottom, it's covered, absolutely.
So give us some type of relief, you know, to know whatever happens, help is ready.
That's right, that's right. And, you know, as we've been talking this morning, too, it's been kind of crazy to see how things have changed, right? Things started out, there was some rain, there was some wind, but it's really a different situation, right? There's been, I mean, the wind has really picked up in some spots. That water along the coast has really picked up as well. So it's been crazy to see kind of those changes so far.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and check in with Josh right now, who is ready to update us again about the storm.
Yeah, guys, let's go ahead, check in, see where Hurricane Debby is at this time. Now, I wanted to show you the path, you know, over the past several hours, because you see a big eastward jog when it was just due west of Tampa Bay, so that was late last night. And once that eastward jog happened, well, it's kind of stayed on that track. So that's why ultimately the storm is going to end up on the far right side of that forecast cone that we've all been watching very closely over the past couple of days. At this point, you see just how close it is to moving onshore there in and around Taylor and Dixie County. Let's get a zoomed in look right now. This is the center of the storm, all right? So we call this the eye. You look at it, well, it's kind of sloppy. It's kind of disorganized. I like that. I like what I see there, but I'll tell you what, you look at these rain bands right here, this is the real nasty stuff, all right? So heading in to Lafayette County, about to head on into Taylor County, including Perry, this rain band right here is going to be no joke. It's going to be lots of heavy rain, and you're going to get some very, very gusty winds. I believe we have a live look right now. This is in Perry. This is the view just on a roadway out there. First thing I note, I'm very happy to see no cars out there on the roadways. Not a good time to drive anywhere across our area. You saw the wind out there kind of moving around the power lines as well. You look at the roadways, you get those big gusts of winds. Perhaps you've seen this in like our typical summertime big thunderstorms where it kind of just sweeps all of that water across the roadway. So absolutely, the winds are kicking there. There's a big gust. You just notice it. That's going to be that big rain band that's about to move on in to Perry proper. So we'll get back to the radar picture. Again, there's our center of circulation, slowly but surely making its way onshore. Steenhatchee's right there. We've got a team right there, and we've got a team in Perry as well. Let's zoom out a little bit and see what's going on across the rest of our area. The biggest, baddest, heaviest rain is going to be primarily for spots to the east of Thomasville and Tallahassee. You look at Thomasville, Tallahassee, Crawfordville, still just seeing the light rain. So you're not going to see big rainfall totals yet for those three areas. But you head further east, we're talking spots like Valdosta, Madison, Live Oak, up through Clinch, Eccles County, down, of course, into Taylor and Lafayette County. That's where you can see the rain piling up very, very quickly. That's also where we got the big wind gusts as well. You look even further west, I'm talking my friends in Bainbridge and in Quincy, western reaches of Leon, Wakulla County, Seminole and Miller. It's quiet, all right? You may have no idea that you got this big bad storm that's out to the east right now, because all the way to the west, it's pretty much just breezy, maybe a little bit of a light sprinkle here and there, but not much rainfall at all so far. You can see that reflected in our rainfall totals over the past 24 hours. Definitely the most so far is going to be in southeastern reaches of the Big Bend, where you start to see the purple and red colors. We're talking about 4 to 6 inches, and again, we're just getting started, all right? That goes to show you there's going to be a lot of rain that gets dumped in the eastern half of the Big Bend and in south central Georgia. That blue area, if you're inside that, you've picked up about 3 inches of rain so far. The greens and the darker blues, you're about 1 to 2 inches. You head further west, you're about less than an inch so far. Obviously, hasn't been much rain. Pretty much most of that you see for our western communities was from the rain bands that came through earlier last night. So that's not even from the main part of the storm that we have moving on shore. So let's just check out a futurecast. We can kind of see how things will shape out. Again, this is just one computer model. It doesn't mean this is exactly how it will look and move. So take that with a little grain of salt as we kind of continue on through. It's got a good grasp of where it is right now, so I pretty much agree with that. Let's put this on into motion. First thing you're going to notice is Debby is not going to want to be in a hurry. That's bad news because that means it's going to dump a lot of rain for these folks in southern reaches of the Big Bend, and if you head north, eastern reaches and into south central Georgia. It's not going to be in a hurry, so it's going to dump a lot of rain. It's going to slowly continue to work its way towards the north and towards the east throughout the day. This puts us tonight around 7, 8 o'clock. And yeah, we're still dealing with Debby, perhaps just making its way across the state line. It could take a little bit more of a turn towards the east to decide to move that direction. Further west, not much rain to go around tonight. And as you move ahead towards tomorrow morning, that's when it finally starts to push off to the north and to the east. By tomorrow morning, it's still going to be breezy out there, and there's still going to be some rain, especially in South Georgia, for a bit to the east, and a little bit as you head down into the Big Bend as well. By Tuesday afternoon, it's still in the picture. It's such a slow-moving system, but overall, most of the impacts will be done for our area. Today is a big rainy and windy day, more of a damaging wind threat as you head further south and east. The Weather Prediction Center has placed about the eastern third of our area under a high risk for excessive rainfall. That's pretty rare, all right? Turns into a moderate risk you head further west. A slight risk, I'm not too concerned about rainfall totals once you head further west of Thomasville and Tallahassee. It's nothing that we haven't dealt with before. But eastern communities, yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the concern of this hour. We're still looking at potentially an additional 8 to even 12 inches, all right? I think that's a little bit on the high side. We've already had a lot so far. Of course, as you head further west, those rainfall totals are going to drop off tremendously, all right? Maybe we've got additional 3 to 6 inches as you head towards the middle parts of our area, and perhaps just less than 2 inches to go for the western third of our area. That's what we got in terms of rain. That's the main concern. The second concern is going to be the winds. For now, so far so good, especially for most of our area. The wind is becoming a concern for southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. These are our sustained winds. We'll talk more about wind gusts in a second, but these are the winds that last longer than just those really sharp bursts. So it goes to show you, we got a 33 mile per hour sustained wind in Perry. So we're approaching that tropical storm for sustained winds. 18 miles an hour in Tallahassee, 21 in Thomasville, 20 Bainbridge and Valdosta. I don't see anything concerning past southeastern reaches of the Big Bend at this time. Now the wind gusts are going to be a little bit higher. Check this one out. This is one of our first big ones right there, coming in at Lafayette High, 60 miles per hour. Okay, we need to expect more of those over the next few hours as Debby starts to make its way on shore near Taylor County and near Lafayette County as well. You head further towards the north, look at Valdosta, wind gust of 39 miles per hour. Very far away from the storm, still feeling a lot of those impacts, getting that heavy rain. You head further west, still quite breezy out there, 30 miles per hour in Tallahassee, 31 in Thomasville, 36 miles per hour down by the coast there at Alligator Point. There's a big one in Perry, 48 miles an hour, 46 in Live Oak. Once you get the wind gusts of like 40, 50 miles an hour, those are the ones that are going to start causing those power outages. Could see some even further west. We know we got lots of trees. Doesn't take too much of a breeze to knock some tree limbs down, which will cause those outages. Let's talk about what the winds are going to be doing throughout the rest of today and into tomorrow as well. As the storm moves on shore, that's the worst of the wind, all right? We're looking at wind gusts, perhaps 60, 70 miles per hour, maybe a little bit higher as you get really close to the coast and offshore. That seems to be kind of the high side of this thing. As you move further inland throughout the day today, this brings us into maybe around a little bit after the noon hour. That's when our center has definitely moved on shore. You're seeing wind gusts of around 50 to 60 miles per hour near the center of this thing, even a little bit further off towards the west. As we head towards later on today into this evening after sundown, that's when South Georgia, especially South Central Georgia, those wind gusts could pick up even more, all right? We're talking still around 40, 50, maybe close to 60 miles an hour, but at that point, Debby will be weakening because it moved on shore. Once you cut off the supply of warm water, it can no longer strengthen. It will get downgraded back into a tropical storm. And as we head towards Tuesday morning, all right, at this point, the storm is pretty much starting to move out of our area. It's still going to be breezy when you wake up on Tuesday, a little bit of a gradient wind going on. So don't expect those winds to drop too much. But again, at that point, the dangerous impacts from the storm will be over. We'll talk a little bit about storm surge. Again, this is the potential peak, so this is the highest that we could possibly see in these areas. It's all very dependent on exactly where the storm is ending up. Right now, it's positioned again right around Steinhatchee, so you get the winds coming out of the south and out of the west as well. That's kind of pouring into Dixie County, so I expect they're seeing a great deal of storm surge right now. At the most, 6 to 10 feet from there through Taylor all the way to the Wakulla County coastline. And as you head a little bit further towards the west, we've still got 4 to 6 feet possible along the Franklin County coastline. Even though these areas are going to be further away from the actual center of the storm, the way Appalachia Bay is kind of put together, if you get any storm that pushes into the bay, the water has nowhere to go, all right? So it has to go up. It's going to go obviously up to where the storm is going, but it's also going to try to go the other way, and it's still going to run into land. So that's why you see a pretty high storm surge value, even if it's not exactly in the direct path. The tide times we've been showing you because they make a big difference, right? You look at spots like St. Mark's, Steinhatchee, where we already had high tide. That means the water is naturally starting to ebb out of the land, all right? It's trying to head back to sea, so that's good. We've got the storm surge that's trying to pile it back onto the land, but naturally it's trying to flow on out. Spots like Apalachicola, the high tides at 648, which we're approaching that right now. So once we get past that, that water will also start to naturally try to flow back out into the ocean. Another look at the radar picture. Again, the center of the storm trying to make its way on shore, just near Taylor and Dixie County and southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. Lots and lots of heavy rain on the northern half and on the eastern half of this. A little bit just near the center on the western half, and then a steep cutoff. Some folks, Bainbridge, Quincy, not seeing any rain at all. I want to show you our 7-day forecast real quick, just so you can get an idea of what to expect for the days to come. Tuesday, still gonna have a little bit of rain to deal with tomorrow, not for everyone, but by Wednesday and Thursday, those chances go way down and those temperatures go way up. It's gonna be hot out there for the middle of the week. We got lots more updates on Debby coming up from Rob, but let's get back to Lenitra and Madison.
All right,
well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Like he's mentioned, you know, I mean, many of our reporters are out there, right? And so they've experienced these conditions all morning for us. Many of them went down to the coast yesterday.
Yes.
So they've kind of been there every step of the way. So we hope they're hanging in out there. We've just got word that there's about 30,000 people across the Big Bend in South Georgia without power right now. So as those winds continue to pick up, we'll keep track of those outages.
Yeah, we have crews in different areas between Taylor County, Jefferson County, even here in Leon County. And we're going to go ahead and check in now with Brea Ruffin, who's in Steinhatchee, the coastal area of Taylor County there. A lot of action this morning.
Madison, Lenitra, the power is still out by us. We've been in complete darkness for about 40 minutes. The rain and the wind did calm down a bit, but it's starting to pick back up. Now, Seahag Marina owner Danielle Norwood stepped out here for a bit to check in on the building, and she told us that although it's calm right now, she's still worried about possible flooding.
I'm definitely anxious. You know, I think we're well prepared. It's just, we don't know what's going to happen. That kind of throws a lot of questions into, you know, what do we do? What can we do? And I sure would like it to be light out too.
Do they do any kind of like tests for your heart? She says they are prepared for cleanup after the storm passes. We'll keep you guys posted if conditions start to pick up out here and if we get power back on. Madison, Lenitra, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Brea. I'm sure that, you know, some people are worried, but I'm glad they at least prepared.
Yeah, and Seahag Marina is right next to or near Roy's restaurant, right? And Roy's took on a heavy hit during Idalia. So seeing those situations there, I know Roy's had planned to close today, and that's a hot spot in Steinhatchee. So thinking about our people out there in Steinhatchee right now, of course, along with the rest of the Big Bend in South Georgia.
That's right. And Stacey Eyewitness she's in Taylor County as well, but more inland. She's in Perry right now, and she's been following things there, giving us updates on that wind and rain of how it looks in the town of Perry. Stacey.
Yeah, Lenitra, you said the wind and rain, and that is exactly what we're experiencing. And even right now as we speak, the wind picking up. I mean, the trees that are back over there, that light, right past that light, those trees that have been flickering, not the trees rather, the light that's been flickering, but those trees, we have seen the wind just blow straight through those trees all morning long. And it's only picking up. And I imagine the next time we check back in with you guys, it'll be the same, and it is going to be a lot more consistent when it comes to those strong winds. But we keep getting those gusts. We've been out here the entire time, and so we're experiencing that. Of course, the rain is very consistent, and you can probably hear some of the wind as well because it is definitely picking up from where we were just 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, and we anticipate that will be the case. Now, while we've been out here this morning, I did speak to a resident who actually evacuated from Keaton Beach and came here, and he explained that he just spent a lot of money repairing his home from Hurricane Idalia, and so now he is a little bit fearful of what will happen when he returns home again this time. Take a listen.
I did. I was fearful because it was such a strong storm. They were saying a 3, 4, possible 4. So I really didn't know if I was going to have a home, house to come home to. So that was very nerve-wracking.
And he's not the only one. I mean, there are several people that I've spoken to in the time that we've been in Taylor County who have that same fear of wondering what is next. People still on that road to recovery. But in terms of the conditions right now, the biggest thing that we are seeing, the rain is steady, but the wind is consistently picking up. We're getting gusts every few minutes or so with those strong winds. So, of course, if you do, for whatever reason, have to be out, just be careful because that's what we're seeing right now. Madison and Lenitra, I'll send it back to you.
Of course, it seems like the wind and rain have been the theme for the morning so far. So again, we do want people to be careful. Do not go outside if you don't have to.
Totally. And I know our meteorologists, Steve, have been talking about this since days leading up to Debby, right? Is that this is going to be a rainmaker. And Rob, every morning has told you and I both for the past couple of weeks that we've had those showers every single day. So rain is not something that we need right now, but we're going to go ahead and check in with our Savannah Kelly, who is still with us in St. Marks. That's out in Wakulla County. Savannah, do you have any update for us?
Yeah, Madison, we are having a lot of rain here. You can probably tell that I am soaked right now, and the wind is just making it a lot worse because the rain is coming at us sideways. So we are seeing a lot of wind, some rain, and things are pretty much the same here since we last checked in. The roads are empty. We haven't seen many cars driving by, which is good. We've got a few boats docked here in the marina that have kind of been bumping around from the wind, and we're sort of just monitoring the situation. Looks like it's getting a little bit lighter out here. The sun is about to sort of making its way coming up, so we're getting a little bit of light here. But overall, just very rainy, very windy, and we're monitoring the conditions here, but we'll keep you updated as things progress. But for now, Lenitra, Madison, back to you.
All right. Again, that wind and rain. All right. Thank you so much, Savannah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and check in now with our Wakulla County Sheriff's Office PIO, Jeff Yarbrough. And Jeff, do we have you with us this morning? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Oh, perfect. Yes, I've got you. And I guess just kind of go ahead and give us an update about the situation out there in Wakulla County. Have you guys had to respond to any calls, or how are things looking for you so far?
In the last 2 hours or so, we actually had multiple downed trees in the roadways. Largely, those have been cleared up as of now. Last I checked, there was a few reports of some of our traffic lights are out. So we do want to remind people, obviously, in the aftermath of the storm, if you don't have to go out and drive around, we ask that you do stay home. And if you do have to go out and you encounter a traffic light that's not operational, to remember to treat that as a four-way stop.
A very good reminder there. A lot of people, I don't know if they forget or don't want to take heed, but yes, when you come to those intersections, treat it as a four-way stop. Well, Jeff, can you also talk about evacuations? What's the status with that there?
So yesterday we did issue a mandatory evacuation for Zone A, which is the coastal areas of our county. That's still in effect, but I do believe the way the storm has kind of played out, I don't know of any reports that we've had of any storm surge or flooding issues so far, and I don't know that we're going to have to deal with those effects, dealing with the path that this storm has taken. So thankfully, we've been spared the worst effects of this storm. The main thing that we're worried about now going forward is it's still raining. We've had a lot of rain before this, so flash flooding is still a bit of an issue. And just with the amount of wind, it's very easy for trees to come down, given that we've had so much rain. And so it's still a possibility to have a lot of trees come down in the county, and we're kind of monitoring that.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And I did just want to ask, and you may have already kind of answered it, but what is your message maybe to our viewers right now as this storm continues to make its way through the Big Bend in South Georgia? What do you have to say to the people of Wakulla County?
If you don't have to go out today, please stay home. Obviously, it wasn't a bad storm for our county, thankfully, and our thoughts and prayers go out to those to the east of us who are dealing with, worse time than we are. But we ask our citizens, it wasn't terrible here, but there is debris in the roadway. There are power outages, and so if people could just, if they don't have to go out, stay home and allow the storm to clear and let things get a little bit safer before people get back on the roadways.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Captain. First of all, I do want to apologize for calling you Jeff a few minutes ago.
No worries.
But thank you so much, Captain Jeff Yarbrough, for spending some time with us. I know you guys have been so busy out there, so we just wanted to check in with you and get that information out there. We appreciate your time early this morning.
Yes, ma'am. Y'all have a good day.
You too. All right. We're going to go ahead and check in with Rob right now, who is here to go ahead and give us the latest breakdown.
All right, let's get to it.
Turn this damn mic on.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Now that everybody can hear me, let's get back to it. Great information from Captain Yarbrough there, letting us know what's going on in some of our counties. And I know there's going to be some folks that are going to wake up and be like, hey, where's this hurricane everyone's talking about? Because it's barely raining where I am. And I get it. I totally do. But if you take a look at more than half of the viewing area, boy, oh boy, is there a whole lot of rain coming down. Again, I'm still waiting for the official call for landfall. It's going to be someplace near Steinhatchee, right up against the Taylor and Dixie County coast, right there where the two counties come together. It's where it feels like to me, but I haven't called it yet, so when they do, we'll let you know. And one of the things I think to take from that is, remember, that landfall point, while it's something that we all fixate on, it's not the most important thing. It's where those bands of rain are, because that's where the winds are going to be the strongest. That's where the water's going to come down the hardest. And from right north of Keaton Beach, almost up to Perry right now, through Mayo, over towards Fort White, back down through Cross City, that's that one band that's probably going to be the strongest of them. And as it moves a little bit north, hopefully gets a little bit weaker. There's a pretty significant band along I-10 from Monticello and Madison all the way through Live Oak and down towards Lake City. That one's been a pretty sizable and a pretty significant band for the last 45 minutes or so as well. And then if you take a look, you get into Tallahassee, you get to Crawford, that Highway 319 corridor, we've got some showers, we've got some rain, But that's it. Nothing like some of the activity that we've got in some of our eastern areas. Watch how it's moved over the past 3 hours. There's that core wobbling a little bit more northeast. So, yeah, it's headed that way. And that means maybe making a beeline into parts of Lafayette County up towards Mayo and Live Oak over the next several hours. It is moving so slow. 10 or 12 miles per hour, that's it. And it almost feels like it's moving slower than that. So I think one of the issues that we're going to have today, maybe the issue we're going to have today, is as slow as this moves for so many hours, we're going to get some of these serious rains. And you know, some of those rains will wrap around. Some of those bands will extend a little farther to the west. So we're going to get a couple of pops where maybe we do get a heavier round of rain in some of the spots to the west that haven't seen very much yet. But I think the lion's share of all this rain is going to be Jefferson County and east. And that's how we've been thinking about it for the past day or so. I'm still going on the 6 o'clock information, at least for a little while longer. 80 mile per hour sustained winds near that core. A lot of it at the surface nowhere near that strong, which is great. And as this continues to work its way very slowly to the north and to the east, this is going to be a huge rainmaker up the East Coast. I hear we've got some live pictures or video from Madison County, so let's take a look and see what we've got there. Hard to see a whole lot. Now, the sun's coming up a little before 7 today, so we'll start to get an idea. Now, not that we're going to expect to see a lot of sunshine, but at least it'll make it lighter outside, even with all the clouds. And, of course, the farther east you go with the clouds and the rain, we're going to have a whole bunch of that. Maybe some areas to the west where there's actually some drier air in the upper part of the atmosphere, and that is also part of what's pushing this storm more to the north and east. Well, maybe that'll show us a little bit of sunshine later on today, too. It's going to really be the tale of two different towns. When you get to our eastern areas, so much rain, and you get to our westernmost areas, hardly any rain. You get into the parts of the Panhandle, you get into parts of Alabama, no rain at all. So very, very different from east to west today. This is from the weather stem. I can see some of the rain up against the camera lens at times. And yeah, on I-10 in Madison, on I-10 through parts of Jefferson County, there's been some serious rain for the last little while. We do have several watches and warnings. The hurricane warnings are where we expect the hurricane-like conditions. And that is right now for Franklin and Wakulla County, but definitely for Jefferson, for Taylor, Lafayette, Suwannee, Madison, up through Brooks and Lowndes. And we've got the tropical storm-like warnings all around that. And I do expect tropical storm-like conditions, not just the rain, but the wind, maybe those wind gusts that get up over 39 miles per hour. So let's talk a little storm surge. That's a big issue for some of our coastal areas, especially Taylor and Dixie County, but also Jefferson and even Wakulla. So I think we can find some of that surge up over 6 feet higher than normal, maybe closer to a foot more than normal. Now, one of the things working in our favor has been the fact that we had our high tide very early this morning, and the next one's not till the middle of the afternoon, hopefully when the storm is well on land. So we're not getting that additional surge on top of the high tide, but it's certainly going to still be a lot of water piling up against the coast. Really nice to see that until 4 o'clock today, that tornado watch is still in effect, but it's for now farther to the east out of our area. Doesn't mean there can't be a couple of stronger and dangerous storms. There still can be, but it means that the conditions seem less and less likely for those spin-up tornadoes, which sometimes happen with landfalling tropical systems. So that's great news. Flooding feels like it's going to be the primary concern for today and going forward because of all the rain. And I know there'll be some areas that don't get a whole lot of rain. You're like, Rob, what you talking about? It's not even raining here. But there's going to be so many other spots that get so much rain, maybe more than a foot in places. Add to it all the rain that we've already gotten, and that is going to cause some flooding. Alligator Point, the live shot is up. Let's take a look at that picture and that video and see what's going on out there, because this is really going to be something that we're able to get a handle and to get an idea of what's going on in other locations. You see those trees bending a little bit and see those trees moving a little bit. Alligator Point is one of our spots that not only do we usually get a good surge up against the coast that always washes out that road, but we also get some pretty strong winds. It's got to have something to do with the shape and the way it sits there. But yeah, real windy at Alligator Point and real wet here too. So we are going to find some of our areas even to the west around the coast that do get some of the heavier gusts and get some of the stronger wind, and certainly we'll get some of that surge also. So this is thanks to our friends at the Weather Stem also. You can really see those trees moving around. And I think as we now are getting to the point in the day where it's a little bit lighter outside, more of these cameras will be able to tell us more of a story, and we'll be able to show you more of what's going on, hopefully while you stay safe indoors and let this blow through. I know there's going to be a lot of temptation, especially in Tallahassee, when you're like, it's just a little bit of rain. But the more we can stay off the roads, the better. It was nice to see all these agencies and all these businesses and all these communities shut things down. That way to make sure people can stay safe, plus for the people that would have to, come on in from out of town. state workers that maybe travel along I-10 from near Madison County into Tallahassee. It'd be a really treacherous drive. So it's good that these things are closed down and quiet down. I know it's going to feel like in some spots that you can go about your normal daily business and maybe you're going to try, but the more you can stay off the roads today and leave that for the emergency crews that are trying to get to places to help people out, the better off it's going to be. The flooding is a real concern, and I think that's going to continue. Watch here on this computer forecast. It's maybe just a little slow, right? Because at 6 o'clock, or the initialization of this model, it's got the center more offshore. It feels like it's a little bit more on land and maybe just a touch to the south. But I mean, just a touch. This one is handled pretty well. And we get to noontime today, still hadn't moved a whole lot. We still have some of those bigger feeder bands wrapping around the system and probably giving us a pretty good soaking, even as far west as maybe Gadsden County and maybe into Decatur County. I need to see that happen. I still don't know if it's going to get that far west, but I do think we can get some of those wraparound bands. But as we get to 8 o'clock tonight, places like Lake City and Live Oak and Valdosta, still big rain expectations into the evening and nighttime hours. And then as we get through Tuesday and into Wednesday, we still see it on the screen. So not in a hurry to get away, which means lots of rain well east of Waycross and over towards Jacksonville and up the coast. And they're going to be talking about big flooding potential if they get 2 or 3 days worth of rain from this. Hopefully we just get the one, but I think today is going to be a really soggy day. Now I know we hear hurricane, we hear tropical storm, we immediately think of big winds. Here are the winds we're looking at so far this morning. These are the current wind speeds. These are the sustained winds, that 1 minute average. In Perry, 30 miles per hour. That's windy, absolutely windy. In Thomas Oaks, 21 miles per hour. That's windy. Nothing you want to hit a 9-iron into, but certainly not what you expect with a hurricane, especially one that's making landfall. Now here on the wind gust, that's the strongest one I've seen. Perry now a 62 mile per hour wind gust. As a matter of fact, I see at Lafayette High School 49 mile per hour wind gust. These are those 2-3 second bursts. That's closer to where that core is. Remember, that core itself, it's only 30 miles or so wide. So it's a very small area that are going to have those biggest wind gusts. And that is going to continue likely to lift up maybe into parts of more Lafayette and Suwannee County. And that means we'll get some of those gusts maybe for parts of Madison and Hamilton and Eccles County. So we'll be watching for those gusts. And that's one of the main concerns when you have all these waterlogged trees and tree limbs. A strong wind gust like that can absolutely knock that limb down. And of course, that can cause all those power issues. So these are the winds we're talking about. Most of the gusts that we're going to deal with in that 20 to 40 mile per hour range, which is certainly strong enough and dangerous enough for sure. But it's not that visual memory that we have of what we expect during a hurricane. Here's what the radar looks like. One more time, a little wider picture. You can see that core. It's clearly on land right now, waiting for that call to happen officially. And the more that it moves to the north and east, hopefully it will speed up a little bit. A lot of the implications are that it's not going to be able to speed up. It's going to run into some resistance to the north. But the more it does move on land and the more it starts to weaken, hopefully we can start to calm down some of this rain. All right, we're going to reset. We got lots more to talk about. We'll continue tracking and checking this. We'll continue posting online. I know there's some folks that were without power, and the best way to get a hold of us is to see what's going on with all of the app and all of the social media locations. We'll keep putting the information there for you too, so that way we can all stay ahead of what's going on. It's a good day to just let this pass itself through and let this rain move away. I know western areas definitely different than eastern areas. Just be careful if you're going to be out there on the roads. The fewer people on the roads, likely going to be the better guys. I'll have more in just a couple of minutes.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. First Alert meteorologist Cameron Aaron is in Monticello. We'll join him live right now.
Yeah, and he actually was just saying that they've lost all power in downtown Monticello. So, Cameron, kind of give us a breakdown of how things have changed since the last time we spoke with you.
Yeah, Madison, the weather and the conditions here in downtown Monticello, much different from the last hour that we saw you guys. First of all, good morning from a soggy and a dark downtown Monticello. Again, just about 5 minutes ago, the power went out here in downtown. Overall, the weather, it's not great, but it's also not terrible. The rain continues, the breezy winds continue. About 20 minutes ago, we had a pretty big gust come through as one of those main outer bands worked through Jefferson County. But again, the big story right now, we have no power here in downtown Monticello. We also have a lot of ponding on the roads this morning. So again, if you can, just stay at home, stay off the road. I noticed on some of the alerts, we had a flash flood warning for eastern Jefferson County that technically didn't include us here in downtown. But again, the rain is continuing in sheets, and that's really the big story. And like we talked about for most of the weekend and pushing back into last week, we talked about this storm would be specifically a rainmaker, possibly 8, 9, 10, more than 10 inches of rain once you go east of Tallahassee. And it's crazy. We drove in this morning and the weather in Tallahassee really wasn't that bad. But once you crossed over into Jefferson County and once you got closer to that center of circulation, the conditions really started to go downhill. Again, we have cars on the road this morning, not the best bet to do so, and that's really the situation that we have right now as the rain continues to fall in Madison and Lenitra. But I don't know if Rob or Josh can hear me, but I was wondering if the forward speed had slowed down any. I haven't seen the update from the National Hurricane Center, but I know over the weekend it was about 12 miles per hour, and I was wondering if that slowdown has started yet as it is coming ashore in Taylor County.
Can you hear us? Can you hear me now? All right, so
yeah, I got you.
The latest information that we have is moving at 10 miles per hour. So yeah, it is a little bit slower, and it certainly feels like it's going to continue moving a little bit slower. And of course, that's why we're expecting such big rainfall totals, especially from Jefferson County, Brooks County, Madison County, Taylor County, and all those areas east.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rob, for that. I appreciate it.
Stay safe out there, and as you mentioned, you saw those cars going by, and you're right, that is not the best idea for people to be driving around, especially now that the power is out on top of the wet roads.
Right.
So that's an extra danger that we have out there on the roadways.
Right. So if you can, just to go ahead and stay home for the time being while that storm passes through, as we've told you guys this morning, wait until it's safe to do so. That way also emergency personnel can get out and respond to those calls when they need to safely, and they don't have to worry about other vehicles on the road. You also don't know about downed debris that may have happened or downed power lines. And speaking of downed power lines, we may want to go ahead and check out those power outages from Tri-County Electric. 5,500 in Taylor County without power, 2,300 in Madison County, 2,000 in Jefferson County. So you're looking at that map right there. And we'll continue to track those power outages, those numbers increasing as the morning goes on.
Yeah, that's right. And portable or permanently installed standby generators can come in handy right now during long-term power outages. However, if you do not know how to use them properly, they can be dangerous. So be careful. Here are some safety precautions to take when using a generator. To avoid electrocution, keep the generator dry and do not use in rain or wet conditions. Use it on a dry surface under an open canopy-like structure, such as under a tarp held up poles.
And do not touch the generator with your wet hands, and be sure to turn the generator off and let it cool down before refueling. So store fuel for the generator in an approved safety can. Use the type of fuel recommended in the instructions on the label of the generator, which is these are very important to know, because as we continue to track these power outages across the Big Bend and South Georgia, people are going to be firing up those generators, and generator safety is a huge deal. We've got to make sure we're following all those rules. So be sure, if you have never used a generator before or unsure if you're doing it correctly, that you follow all those instructions to make sure we're using them as safely as possible.
Indeed. I know a lot of people ran out and got those generators, last year, hurricane season, especially after Idalia. So please be careful with them. They can come in handy, but again, it's very serious to be careful with them. We're going to go ahead and check in with Josh right now. He's ready to give us an update on what's going on.
Yeah, that's right, Lenitra. We're actually going to start off with a live look outside. It's just a couple of minutes before 7 a.m. That means the sun is just starting to peak over the horizon, so we can start to get a better view of things out there. This is the view at Shell Point Beach in Wakulla County. And what do you see? Well, it kind of goes frame by frame, so you can't see it in live action, but definitely very breezy down there. You see the winds moving on through. Again, the center of the storm quite a ways away from Shell Point Beach, so they're not getting the brunt of the impacts, but certainly getting some some rain out there and some real gusty winds. We'll actually check in on some of those wind gusts and see who's feeling what at the time being. But I want to go ahead and get a quick check of where Debby is right now. And you can kind of look at the path it's taken over the past 12 to 24 hours. Perhaps you're just joining us and you're saying, well, this thing is way to the east of where that forecast cone was. You're absolutely right. Late last night, had a big bump to the east just off west of Tampa Bay there, and then another bump to the east earlier this morning. So at this point, it is making its way pretty much onshore at this point, right around Taylor and Dixie County. Let's get a zoomed in look. This is what is of the eye wall, all right? It's not very well put together, but it's absolutely there. Steinhatchee is going to be right here, so that's in the middle of it. That means they're not going to be seeing a whole lot of rain right now. Definitely the worst part of the storm is going to be around the eye. So see this really heavy band working its way into Lafayette County, including Mayo, and now into Perry proper. Even some red there. This is definitely some of the worst parts of the storm. It's going to be very, very heavy rainfall right now. If you're in Perry, you're getting through the worst of it. Definitely time to stay indoors, absolutely. And the same thing there in Mayo. That same band is now moving up to the north near Live Oak and Suwannee County, and eventually it'll make its way into southern reaches of Madison County as well. If we take a little bit more of a zoomed out look, we can see what's going on across more of our area. The heavy rain is going to be the yellows and the oranges and even the reds, as I just showed you there. That's where the rainfall totals are adding up as we speak. And that reaches well far north now into South Georgia. Clinch, Eccles County, Lanier, especially Lowndes over into Brooks County now, getting some very big downpours. Similar story in Jefferson County. Now, you head a little bit further west. We're talking Thomasville, Tallahassee, Crawfordville. The rain's going to start to pick up over the next hour or so. I know so far it's just been the light stuff there for the middle of our area, but some of these bands will start to work further west. That means you'll start to pick up a little bit more of the heavier stuff. You head even further west, and yeah, we're talking spots like Gadsden, Decatur, Seminole, Miller County there. Not much rain at all. Even western reaches of Wakulla and Leon County, it has been relatively quiet so far. This is a big difference compared to where you are in our area on the east side versus the west side of this storm. So far, these are the kind of rainfall totals we've been dealing with. You start to see the purples and reds. That's about 4 to 6 inches of rain in southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. The blues represent about 2 to 3 inches. That includes Valdosta and Madison. The green and dark blue colors, that's more of like 1 to 2 inches. That's for Thomasville, Tallahassee down to Wakulla. And further west than that, it's been pretty much less than an inch. And most of that was actually picked up yesterday as those northernmost rain bands started moving on through. But keeping an eye on our storm reports, we're starting to get more. I've seen some reports of wind damage that aren't popping up here. That includes like trees and power lines down. Lots of high wind reports starting to pop up. Those are wind gusts of like over 45 miles per hour. And most of them, again, are going to be confined more so southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. And we'll check in on exactly what the wind gusts are right now. I want to show you a future cast of what Debby's going to be doing over the next several hours. It's going to be a very slow mover. Watch what happens. It is not in any hurry, all right? We're talking about even heading into this afternoon, it could still be parked in southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. This is a big problem because it is going to pile up a lot of rain for the eastern third of our area, and still plenty of gusty winds. Those will continue to cause power outages and continue to cause a little bit of damage as well. Now, on the flip side, you look on the western half of our area, still not that much. It's a completely different storm based on where you are. It's going to continue moving slowly towards the east and towards the north. Eventually, by this evening, that's when it could start to make its way across the state line. And then by tomorrow morning, it's pretty much out of our area. It's still going to be breezy tomorrow. There's still going to be at least a few showers to go around. But the dangerous part of the storm will be well off to our north and east by that point. This little graphic breaks it down for you really well. It's going to tell you where's the worst rain going, right here in this purple area where there's a high risk of excessive rainfall, turns into a moderate risk the further west, and then eventually a slight risk all the way out here. And I'm really not too concerned about rainfall totals once you get to the west of Thomasville and Tallahassee at this point. How much more rain are we expecting? Well, further east, a lot more. All right, we could get upwards of 10 more inches of rain. All right, I think more so. I think a lot of spots might end up getting about maybe 8 to 10 more inches there, perhaps about 4 to 6 more inches a little bit further west, 3 to 5 inches as you head towards Thomasville, Tallahassee, Wakulla, and then less than an inch as you head even further towards the west. Here's some of those wind speeds that I talked about. These aren't the wind gusts. These are sustained winds right now. 44 miles per hour in Perry, 21 in Thomasville, 22 in Valdosta, 18 miles per hour in Tallahassee. So again, west of Thomasville, Tallahassee, winds not much of a concern at this time. The wind gusts are definitely higher. Check this out. Got a wind gust of 54 miles per hour going on in Perry right now, 49 in Lafayette, 48 there at Madison High, still 33 mile per hour wind gust Tallahassee, 35 mile per hour wind gust there at Alligator Point. Let's get an idea of how these will change a little bit over the next several hours. As Debby starts to move onshore, the wind gusts are going to be centered right in the southeastern reaches of the Big Bend. That's where we'll see the biggest ones, and that's pretty much where they're going to be staying, right? We're still going to be experiencing tropical storm force wind gusts further towards the west, all right? It's got a large wind field. Now that hurricane force wind field, not large at all. And it's also eventually going to fizzle out. Once it moves inland, it'll get downgraded to a tropical storm eventually, and the winds will slowly start to subside, but still plenty of those wind gusts to go around all the way throughout the day today. And as we head towards overnight tonight, that's when things start to subside, leading us in just to a breezy day on Tuesday. We talked a lot about storm surge. Again, these are the peak values given to us. The highest storm surge is going to end up more so down to the south, kind of on the southern edge of the storm, which looks to be around Dixie County. That's where that 6 to 10 feet could still be in play. But again, they forecast that as like a worst case scenario type deal. All right, still got plenty more to talk about, but for now we got some new updates from Madison and Lenitra.